Welcome into another edition of the Giant Overreaction with one half of the strong side, left side duo. Shout out to the Beard, got the W this week. Big win for the Washington Commanders, and the New York Giants just struggling to find answers. We end up losing to the Washington Commanders 27-22. Giants are now averaging just 15.4 points per game, and guess where that lands in the NFL? That is dead last at 32nd right now. Lot of questions to be answered, and there's really nowhere to go to try to figure out some of those answers, to be honest. Schoen has built a roster that is really supposed to be ready to compete right now, but it seems like the Giants are absolutely going to have to be committed to the rebuild. At home, the way we have been playing has been pretty pathetic, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and in this game, that wasn't necessarily the case, but the Giants' red zone scoring is also dead last in the NFL, scoring at just 40% of their opportunities in the red zone. 26th in total yards per game at just 306.1 yards per game. And I think it's very clear that the players in this locker room are absolutely losing patience now, not only with the results and with the coaching staff, but obviously with the media. We're going to talk about that a lot today because a lot of the players seem to be frustrated in the locker room after the game when talking to a lot of the beat reporters. Dexter Lawrence in particular, who, when asked by a reporter, "You were sitting here with Brian Burns and looked frustrated. Is that how you feel?" Which to me is a fairly simple question to answer, especially for a professional. And Dexter Lawrence said, "If I'm talking to my teammate, that is nothing for you to be concerned about." And went on to say that they were just talking about where the team could go from here and how they could get better on the field. This is really bad. This team has pretty much fell apart. I'm surprised that they're holding on by a thread the way that they are right now in that locker room. Players have lost their competitive edge. I want to point the finger at Deonte Banks. We're one of the worst teams in the NFL again. And I know last year we won 6 games and things were looking like, this team might have been headed in the direction to maybe win some games, especially with dealing with some of the injuries that they dealt with in the 2023 season. But now the New York Giants are 0-4 in the division. There's no other team in the NFL that is 0-4 in their own division or in any division in football right now. And Joe Schoen, I'm not sure where he is going to try to take the direction of this team, if indeed he is still here by the time the New York Giants enter the 2025 season. It's been a shit show, to say it politely. Shout out to all of y'all that are still pulling up, rocking out with this type of content after seeing the productivity or the product on the field from the New York Giants over the past 9 games. It's been tough. It's been pretty pathetic. But let's break down this game a little bit before we go off into some of these Giant overreactions. I think I got about 4 today for y'all. Let's talk about it. The Commanders traveled up 95 to take on our New York Giants at MetLife Stadium.
Giants are on the board with 11:16 to go here in the third.
And shout out to those of y'all that are here early. You got a little bit of a sneak peek at one of the overreactions. It'll be the last one that we talk about on the show. The Giants had never allowed a rookie quarterback to sweep them within their division, and that all changed on Sunday. The Giants are now 2-7. They fall to the Commanders 27-22. Interesting score. One team falls to 2-7. One team improves to 7-2. Score 27-22. A lot of coincidences there. But the Commanders didn't even have Brian Robinson in this game, who is a player that I consider to be one of the best on that roster, if not the best outside the quarterback position with Jaden Daniels over there. Both teams started this game 3 and out to start this one off. Jones fumbled on the second drive on a play that's just leaving you scratching your head. A lot of people say that Chris Hubbard was blown off the ball as soon as Daniel Jones said hike, but what I think a lot of people are failing to realize is that the Giants were setting up a screenplay there. So your quarterback has to have his head on a swivel to understand when the pressure is getting to him to be able to let go of the ball. And I think Daniel Jones was just looking down the field just a little bit too long, trying to kind of bait some of the players is what it looked like to me. And in return, ends up getting caught slipping, and the ball gets stripped out of his hands. It would have been a walk-in pick six if the defensive lineman would have just caught the ball. Instead, when they go to the replay, you see that Daniel Jones did indeed let go of the ball a little bit early. And a pass interference call later, the Commanders are on the goal line. 2-yard touchdown to Terry McLaurin. Pass interference was on Cordero Flott, another one of Joe Schoen's draft picks that we got to put under the microscope. And Jones did end up answering with the 2-yard touchdown to Chris Manhertz on the next drive. And I think a lot of Giants fans were in relief to have that streak at home of Daniel Jones not throwing a single passing touchdown at home, dating all the way back to 2022 when we clinched our playoff victory against the Indianapolis Colts. But still, we'll get to talking about Daniel Jones. It was not a great game. It was not one of his worst games. The Commanders did answer with an 11-play drive there, scored a touchdown, Austin Eckler, to push it to 14-7. And then before the half, just mismanagement by the New York Giants defense. Deonte Banks gets caught slipping, ankle broken on a sluggo route from Terry McLaurin, and you saw Terry McLaurin kind of give him the "you too small for me." And that was a situation where, had the New York Giants been able to hold the Washington Commanders to just 3 there, you're looking at a 17-7 lead going into the half rather than a 21-7 lead. And I felt like this game was all but over by the time that first half was over. That play really, to me, solidified the New York Giants' fate. And I thought they battled back in the second half in a pretty decent way, especially through the passing game. I thought Daniel Jones was at least finding ways to push the ball down the field, for his standards, right? And I felt that Brian Daboll did commit to the run in the first half, but I almost think that he overly committed to the run in the first half. And Malik Nabers' comments after the game definitely insinuated that there was a game plan that was focused on trying to keep the opposing quarterback on the sideline, which I can respect that to a certain extent. But when your quarterback is 4 of 6 for 0 yards and 1 touchdown at the half, you have to point some fingers at this coaching staff, Brian Daboll in particular. Before the last drive there, Daniel Jones was 4 for 4 with 0 yards. And to have that kind of overemphasis of running the ball in the first half is just puzzling for me. And I do understand that a lot of people are going to point the finger at Daniel Jones on this one and say, well, Brian Daboll is strapped at the quarterback position, and that is why he is calling the game plans the way that he is. But to me, the way that Brian Daboll has been calling these game plans, it's almost as if he's trying to get fired. If Daniel Jones is the problem and you can't put together a game plan that puts Daniel Jones in the best position to be able to throw the ball, because there is speed on this offense, especially in the wide receiver core. There are some weapons on this offense where, to me, the smarter game plan would be to expose Daniel Jones. Go out there and let him gunsling the ball, throw the ball, make the mistakes. We don't have to coddle a quarterback in his 6th year. If he is not the guy, he's not the guy, which I would think that every New York Giants fan across the country, even the biggest homers of homers that we have seen in our fan base, are starting to at least realize that Daniel Jones is not the guy. Field goal by each team to start the second half. Commanders are up 24-10. Daniel Jones answers with arguably his best play of the day, maybe his best play of the season, where he runs a read option to the left side, and it's pretty much all but stopped is what it looked like as Mike Sanristo approaches him to make the tackle, and Daniel Jones just lowered his shoulder and ran over him with a real big boy play, probably his best play of the season. Now, the Giants end up going for a 2-point conversion, and if you guys have been watching what we do over here on Authentic and the Beard, you know that me and the Beard are very against these particular type of analytics when it comes to going for 2-point conversions when you're down by 2 scores, particularly being down 14 points. And Brian Daboll ends up going for 2 pretty early on, and the New York Giants don't get the 2-point conversion. So instead of being down by 7, you now go down by 8. 9 minutes left in this game, Jaden Daniels made a huge play on a 3rd down conversion to Austin Eckler. And you saw this time in and time again with Jaden Daniels. When his team needed a big play from him at the quarterback position, he was able to make it. When you look at the box scores between both of these quarterbacks, if you didn't watch the game, you would think that Daniel Jones maybe played a better game than Jaden Daniels did. Very similar on the box score with 2 touchdowns apiece, completion percentage looking very similar. Even the 3rd down statistics from the box score standpoint favor the New York Giants, to be honest. But when you see what Jaden Daniels does in these big-time windows, we always talk about the windows, the opportunities to put a team away. That when you see a team clawing back, cutting the game to a 1-score lead, you find a way to put that last nail in the coffin, right? You don't allow a team to be able to pull an Uma Thurman and bang their way up out of that wooden coffin and find a way to claw themselves out of the dirt and find a way to victory. Commanders ended up adding another field goal on that possession to push the lead to 27-16. The Giants end up scoring another touchdown to Theo Johnson. And I have to credit the New York Giants offense in this regard in the second half. They needed a touchdown extremely fast because you're looking at a 2-score lead here. And I felt like the game was over. Daniel Jones makes some plays with his arm, makes some plays with his leg, finds Theo Johnson on a seam route right down the middle of the field. And that is the throw that I've been begging for the New York Giants to be able to find a way to be able to execute those type of plays on those type of vertical concepts. And yeah, Theo Johnson was all but just wide open on the play, and Daniel Jones saw him free up, and he put a good throw on him. And it resulted in the New York Giants getting another touchdown. Now, they end up going for another 2-point conversion. And the Commanders do a hell of a job on defense to limit any opportunity for Daniel Jones to find a way to put that ball in the end zone. He scrambled. Can't even remember which one was the 2-point conversion. One of them, he stepped up in the pocket. One, he fumbled. The other one, he just backed up until he had no time, and he ended up taking a sack on the play. Now, the Washington Commanders had to find a way to drain the clock. And I thought that this was the difference in showing you the type of coaching staff that the Washington Commanders have versus the type of coaching staff that the New York Giants have. You're just above the 2-minute warning. It was about 2:04 left on the clock. And I'm normally pretty decent with time management at the end of a game, and I can kind of at least predict, okay, they should go this way, especially with the influence of the broadcast. And I didn't hear Mark Sanchez, who I thought did a terrible job on his broadcast. I won't throw too much shade his way, but I do not like seeing broadcasters favor certain quarterbacks. And in this game, you could hear that from Mark Sanchez all throughout the broadcast about Daniel Jones fighting for his life 4 and 5 times. Oh, this quarterback's fighting for his life. He must have said it 3 times before we even got to halftime. And I'm like, how's a quarterback fighting for his life? And he's only 4 for 4. He's only been sacked 1 time in the first half. And we're up here saying he's fighting for his life. I didn't see it. And I felt like it was a pity party for the quarterback position. Now, 2 minutes to go in this game, 2:04 left. And I'm thinking the Commanders are just going to run the ball on second down. Instead, their coach is smart enough to understand that whether you run it or you pass it, the 2-minute warning is approaching. You should be able to drain 4 seconds on the clock. The 2-minute warning is going to stop the clock no matter what happens. So you can either run the ball or pass the ball in that situation. And I really have not been put in these type of positions where I've had to analyze a game and notice this type of just top-tier NFL coaching. So the New York Giants think that the Commanders are going to just run the ball there. They're preparing for the run. The Commanders go play action. And Jaden Daniels finds his receiver down the field. They pick up a big chunk and find themselves in field goal range and put the game away. 2 opportunities. When you look at the New York Giants in this game and in last week's performance and the week before that, anytime they had opportunities to keep the game close, find their way to a victory, they could not do it. And in late game situations, not only does Daniel Jones fail, Brian Daboll ends up failing as well. It's been a tough season to be a New York Giants fan, and this was yet another game where the Giants had an opportunity to stay in the game. I do think that the Commanders were toying with the New York Giants a bit. You saw it in the second half. Jaden Daniels laughing on the sidelines when he sees Malik Nabers catch a pass and try to run backwards in reverse field. They were comfortable throughout this entire game, and they weren't tested many times. I'd say the only times they were tested in this game were those 2 opportunities late in the game, and the quarterback stepped up, and he made all the plays necessary for you to go out there and handle business and lead yourself to a victory. And I don't know where the New York Giants are going to go moving forward. But now you got the trade deadline coming up tomorrow. And I think the Giants may have squandered an opportunity to maybe get rid of some of these players, especially one that is at the top of my list right now. With the emergence of Tyrone Tracy at the running back position, there's no need to have a Devin Singletary on this team, but I think that the window to be able to trade Devin Singletary happened last week. The Dallas Cowboys were in a situation where not only were they the worst running team in the NFL, they're dead last in rushing yards per game, dead last in rushing yards per carry. And their season was on the line this upcoming week where they needed a running back so much that they kept Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas because he was missing team meetings. It goes to show you that players are clocking out over there in Dallas. And it would have made a lot of sense to bring in a guy like Devin Singletary. And I thought if the Dallas Cowboys were willing to send the New York Giants a 5th rounder at best, 6th rounder, whatever you could get. I would be down to trade Devin Singletary to the Dallas Cowboys. I thought it was the perfect opportunity to get rid of a player that is not contributing to this roster. And the Giants still owe Devin Singletary a lot of money here. I think it's $1.5 million this year, $3 million next year. He had a $9 million guaranteed contract coming into the season. Now, all the obvious players that people are going to be talking about, like the man on the graphic, Darius Slayton, is a guy that I've questioned maybe bringing Darius Slayton back, because your 3rd round draft pick in Jalen Hyatt is a guy that saw 4 snaps in this game. Jalen Hyatt has 1 reception on the entire season. So if you allow a guy like Darius Slayton to walk in free agency next year, who's going to step up and play that role? I don't think it'll be a Wan'Dale Robinson. He's been fairly quiet the past couple of weeks, and I think we understand the caliber of player that Wan'Dale Robinson is. It's not to say that he's a terrible player, a draft bust as a 2nd-round pick or anything like that. But I don't think that a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson has been sniffing elite. Does that maybe make you consider getting rid of a guy like Jalen Hyatt? I wouldn't. I think you need to keep all the talent that you have on this roster and keep the depth pieces, whether they're performing or not. The goal here is to draft and develop. And to think that some of these players who have not even been able to see their 3rd season, some of these players who have not even been able to see more than 1,300 snaps as a New York Giant are already being guys that are pushed to the side and are a non-factor for the New York Giants, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Maybe Daniel Jones could be a guy that you could possibly trade if indeed he has any type of trade value, which I doubt he does, to be honest. And he's coming off, statistically, maybe one of his better games of the year, right? 20 of 26, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns. If you just look at the box score, like I said, you would think this is a pretty damn good game from Daniel Jones. When you look at the passer rating of 119.7, when you look at the QBR of 72.5, which goes to show you that those statistics don't show you and tell the whole entire story of what is happening on the field. Daniel Jones just sacked 2 times in this game, yet when I'm looking up and down my timeline on social media, all I'm seeing is people complaining about how bad the New York Giants offensive line is, yet Joe Schoen went out there and he invested a bunch of money in that offensive line. He spent $14 million on Jermaine Illuminor with a 2-year, $14 million deal. He spent $30 million on John Runyon at the left guard position. He brought in Greg Van Roten late in the season, Aaron Stinney late in the season. Daniel Jones had 7 rushes for 54 yards. Half of them came on 1 run on a read option that was just completely wide open for him on the right side of the field. It's puzzling. And Joe Schoen said, we didn't pay Daniel Jones $40 million a year to hand it off to a $12 million running back. And yet and still, the New York Giants in the first half of this game, that's all they did was hand the ball off to running backs. Maybe not one of them that is getting paid $12 million, but we saw that guy who's getting paid $12 million just on Sunday, right after our game, against the Jacksonville Jaguars, put up damn near 200 yards of offense and was hurdling defenders like a goddamn kangaroo. And that's not to say that Tyrone Tracy has not been a great contributor to this ball club. But if you didn't pay Daniel Jones $40 million to hand it off to a $12 million running back, then why did you pay Daniel Jones? I think that is the answer that has been tiptoed around by this New York Giants front office. Daniel Jones had the one blemish, you could say, the one big blemish on his game, which was the fumble. And now, no player has fumbled more than Daniel Jones has since coming into the league in 2019. He had just 1 completion over 20 yards, which was the touchdown to Theo Johnson. 5 throws behind the line of scrimmage. So you're looking at a quarterback, when you remove the throws behind the line of scrimmage, that was 15 to 21. How do we expect to win games like this without a juggernaut of a rushing attack? You could look at the Detroit Lions and think about how they have been able to find their way to the victories that they have, and Jared Goff playing MVP-like football, but they're absolutely doing that with explosive plays. And they are relying on a 2-headed monster at the running back position. The Giants have played so bad. There are no answers. There is no up. And I feel as if we are going to just be in this purgatory that we are in. And I talked about this on Bleacher Report. This isn't your typical type of purgatory where you're winning 7 to 9 games. Maybe you might be pushing for a playoff berth here and there. This is just bad football all across the board. Daniel Jones has 8 touchdowns and 5 interceptions on the year. He's on pace for 16 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 3,760 yards. And I've been screaming, stream after stream after stream, that the New York Giants need to be proactive at the quarterback position and find a way to make that decision right now. The Giants have scored more than 24 points just 2 times at home in the entire Daniel Jones era. That is from 2019 to 2024, halfway through the season. The Chiefs won 2 Super Bowls between the time that Daniel Jones threw touchdowns at MetLife dating back to 2022 and the ones we saw on Sunday. Shout out to the Sarah York for that statistic there. It's been extremely bad for the New York Giants. And this is not a game where I would point the finger at the quarterback solely. But we have lowered the bar of quarterback play for the New York Giants so far that it's gotten to the point where fans are now just looking for a reason to not point the finger at Daniel Jones and find a way to say, well, he wasn't at fault at this game. If you look at the way that he was a one-read quarterback in this game and how it limited Brian Daboll's game plan, but that's not to take away the blame for Brian Daboll as well in this game. But I think that Brian Daboll is running out of answers of how to call a game. With the Malik Nabers comments, it's very clear that the approach in this game was to just run the rock as heavily as we could and try to control the clock. But then when you get to the second half and you're sitting there down by 2 scores, what are you supposed to do? I think that Schoen, I think that Brian Daboll thought that coming into this game, his defense was going to be able to hold this Washington Commanders offense to less points, which that was a mistake in its own right. The Commanders came into this game scoring over 30 points a game. I knew that if you were going to compete with this Commanders team, you were going to have to score and score often. The New York Giants defense was pretty terrible in this game. They blitzed on 60% of Jaden Daniels' dropbacks, which was the highest amount that they have blitzed on the year, second to the Cleveland Browns game where we blitzed Deshaun Watson somewhere between 50 and 60%. And with all that blitzing, the Giants had just 5 total pressures on Jaden Daniels on 25 dropbacks during this entire game. Missed tackles left and right during this matchup. Andrew Phillips, a guy who the knock coming out of Kentucky was that he struggled with tackling, but throughout the season he has been very good. Missed a ton of tackles in this game. Tyler Nubin, the other draft pick from 2024 from our secondary, another guy that was missing tackles left and right. You know, I saw Jaden Daniels outrun Brian Burns on the edge there, and I just shook my head, like seeing Brian Burns just trying to dive and make a shoestring tackle. Deonte Banks, the big explosive plays that he allowed in this game. He held Terry McLaurin to under 30 yards in both of these matchups. But McLaurin finished the day with 2 receptions, both of them being touchdowns, for 19 yards. I went back to double-check the box score, and I was like, is that right? Deonte Banks has now allowed 6 touchdowns in 9 games this season. It is the worst of all cornerbacks in the entire NFL. And when you saw him in the post-game press conference, he looked extremely dejected, man. And I think a lot of that has to do, obviously, with Deonte Banks' play on the field. A guy that came into this year extremely confident when they gave him the cornerback 1 keys and put a lot of pressure on his shoulders. But now that he is not living up to the standards that Joe Schoen and the rest of his coaching staff put on Deonte Banks, you can see a player that has completely lost his confidence out there. We are paying Brian Burns $28 million a year. And if we weren't, I would be like, hey, guy's playing pretty decent. But we're paying him the same amount of money that the Seattle Seahawks are paying Geno Smith to play the quarterback position. When you look at Daniel Jones and you look at Brian Burns making $68 million a year combined, those 2 players are not living up to the money. And I don't want to sit up here and count pockets too crazy, but how can we not? Our defensive backs look terrible. And a lot of that has to do with banking on young players that you just drafted being thrusted into roles to be leaders on a team that has been built to compete. This team has not been built to be rebuilt. They have been built to try to go out there and capitalize on a window that everyone can see is wide open in the NFC. And that's not fair to guys like Deonte Banks, if you ask me. Deonte Banks is not supposed to be going into his second season being looked at as a cornerback one. And anybody that fell for that as a Giants fan, I feel sorry for you, because that is the doings of the front office. You could look at Deonte Banks' play from last season and understand that he was not a cornerback one. It's clear as day. My question marks coming into this year, because when I look at tape, I focus on tape from an offensive standpoint, and that's a fault of my own, because I'm very infatuated with the quarterback position, one, because that's the position that I played in high school. And I'm infatuated with the skill positions on the offensive side of the ball, because that's all I did as a kid. Everything I ever did was either playing tight end, wide receiver, or quarterback. And that's just how I like to view the game. So when I go view the All-22, especially in 2022, 23, and 24, I'm at fault for looking at it from a standpoint of the quarterback position and from the offensive standpoint. So I don't get to see a lot of Deonte Banks All-22 that much. But when I saw the PFF grades of him coming into this season, that he was of all cornerbacks that have gotten any snap, he was ranked 183rd as far as his PFF grade goes. But that grades guys that don't get on the field that much, right? So it's a bit skewed. And then seeing Emmanuel Forbes, who now has been relegated to a bit of a role player coming off the bench for the Washington Commanders, he was just 5 slots behind Deonte Banks entering the season at 188. And I said, the reputation of these two players is so different. You look at Emmanuel Forbes and people are saying, you got to find a way to get rid of this guy. He's one of the worst cornerbacks in the league. And you look at the reputation of Deonte Banks and it's like, yo, this guy's some kind of shutdown corner that's on the up and up, about to be a cornerback one. I thought that Joe Schoen made a grand mistake not addressing the opposite corner of Deonte Banks. And you could tell that in his mind, he viewed the Giants' defensive roster as if all he had to do was bring in a cornerback two, when in reality, they needed to bring in a veteran cornerback one. Stephon Gilmore was right there for the taking in free agency. The Dallas Cowboys felt that they could part ways with him, and I don't fault the Dallas Cowboys, because they have a really good cornerback room over there led by Deron Bland and Trayvon Diggs. They've dealt with injuries throughout the entire season that have been a portion of why their season has been derailed. But this is just another mistake. And Adoree Jackson, a guy that they brought in at the last minute, and I had people on my social media telling me that the reason why they did that was because Adoree Jackson didn't want to be at minicamp. And I think that's a crock of bullshit. And we're starting to see it at the beginning of the year. They didn't just throw Adoree Jackson out there at cornerback two. They slow played him into the lineup, and now he's been dealing with injuries throughout the whole entire season. The Giants are one of the worst franchises right now in the NFL. And the only other franchise that you can look to and say maybe that franchise looks a bit like what we look like is the Carolina Panthers. And coincidentally, Joe Schoen and the general manager of the Carolina Panthers, Dan Morgan, just so happen to be best buds that are both running their respective franchises into the ground, into the dirt. And I feel for all the Giants fans across the country, especially, and I will continue to emphasize this, especially the ones that have paid for season tickets that now, in the back half of the season, when the New York Giants are now virtually, if not technically, eliminated from the playoffs, I know it was a 1% chance coming into this game, have to find a way to sell their season tickets for the rest of these games and find a better way to spend their Sundays. I've been thinking about this. If I didn't have to do the Giant overreactions on Monday and stay committed to things that I have made it a point to commit to, on Sundays, I would spend my time golfing. I just went to the thrift store the other day with my girl. She wanted to check out like some Halloween specials and stuff like that to kind of finish out her costume. And I saw a set of golf clubs in there, brand spanking new set of golf clubs. And I walked away with some golf clubs, a set of irons from 3 through 9 for $14, brand new. And I've been really wanting to test out these golf clubs. And the way that the Giants have been playing as of late, Sundays seem like the perfect way to spend my day, at least when the weather's still nice, going out there and playing around at 18. Instead, I've committed to these doings. I've been committed to the family that shows up week in and week out in this chat to be able to come up here and not only, express my thoughts on this team and go through a bit of therapy myself, but share and learn that same exact sentiment from the fan base. So again, salute to all of y'all that pulled up. It's a gang of y'all in the building here already, just 30 minutes into this show. And next week, the New York Giants get to play their game early in the morning, sometime around 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I think that's going to be a great way to maybe when that game is all said and done, for me to maybe go out there and at least get around a 9 in on my Sunday, because this is just not fair to the Giants fans across the nation. And we have spent the better part of a decade watching one of the poorest organizations and products on the field for the better part of it. I'm going to tap in with the chat. Then we'll get into some of these Giant overreactions. I got about a good 3 or 4 of them, to go over today. It's tough. It's been really tough. I already see we got a super chat, so let's go ahead and start there. Big shout out to the fam one time, Talking Eco in the building for the $4.99 super chat. Okay. Says these division losses might really push Mara to reconsider Schoen and Daboll's job safety. Daniel Jones needs to be gone. Mike Kafka as a play caller over Dabes, in his opinion, is what he is favoring. And I'm not mad at that. It's interesting that we have not seen Mike Kafka's face through 9 games of New York Giants football this year. And I honestly cannot wait to get to the bye to see Joe Schoen, and more importantly, I really want to see if John Mara is going to have the guts to face the New York Giants fan base in a press conference and address the issues thus far through the season. But I'm with you. I think that Brian Daboll has not called good game plans. Both of them have not called game plans that truly put the New York Giants over the top. And I think both of them call game plans that just keep the New York Giants in the game enough to just lose it at the end. They both don't know how to win. But I do think that at least you got the 2022 version of Mike Kafka to look at and say, all right, at least we were able to win 9 games that year. He was smart enough to rely on Saquon Barkley. The question that I want to ask myself here and the chat Talking Eco is, it would be amazing to figure out when these decisions were all made within that New York Giants organization, who was on board for what. I would love to know if Mike Kafka was on board with the Daniel Jones signing. I would love to know that exact same answer to that question from Brian Daboll, from John Mara, from Joe Schoen. If there was anyone that was really out, from Brandon Brown, to see if this is a complete organizational failure with these moves that have been made, with bringing in Brian Burns on a defense that absolutely needed a 3-tech next to Dexter Lawrence. Instead, they wanted to bring in another pass rusher. Yeah, the New York Giants came into this week leading the NFL in sacks, but how much is that really helping our defense? Looks great on the box score, but how much is that really helping our defense? I'm with you on a lot of this statement, Talking Eco, man. Big salute to you for pulling up, man. You've been supporting this channel for a long time, and major respect to you for that, man. Definitely agree with a lot you said there. All right, let me see what we got here. I'll start here because this one was just here. And it just jumped on me. Mr. Zoe says, it is easier to find another running back. Is it easier to find another running back or quarterback? I think it's much easier to find another running back. At the end of the day, you have to find a way to stack elite pieces on both sides of the ball. When I look at the running back situation, it's just $12 million. And when we look at the quarterback situation, along with Brian Burns, you're talking $40 and $28 million. Do I think that Saquon Barkley was more of a asset to the New York Giants than both of those players? Absolutely. Absolutely. Big Dog Status says Saquon still got that burst. He holding back with the Giants. Might have been. I think that at the end of Saquon Barkley's career, he was trying his damnedest to be a professional, to say all the right shit in front of the media, to be the right teammate, to be the right leader. But I think that he was not as invested as when you see the way he's running with the Philadelphia Eagles. That dude is running like a man on a mission right now. And it's unfortunate that the Giants couldn't build within the 6 years that he was here 5 years that he was here. They couldn't build, a functional offense around him to keep him invested. And I always thought that with Saquon Barkley, it was a respect factor. If you look at the video that I'd made after the 2022 season when the contract negotiations were going on, I talked about points being loyalty and respect. And I will always take respect over loyalty. A lot of times, loyalty will come with respect. The Giants were neither to Saquon Barkley after all he put into this franchise. And I think that's the reason why he got a little bit spiteful towards the end of his career. OG Knockout, big shout out to OG one time, man. Been pulling up for all of these streams, says, who wants Daniel Jones? The Giants were bidding against themselves when they re-signed Daniel Jones. That's a fact right there. We know that. Shout out Tank Zappa in the building. He says, I'm out on Schoen and Daboll. I don't like how they're trying to sell this as a new rebuild in year 3. They made a lot of terrible moves in their first 2 years. Not sure they should pick the next quarterback. Absolutely going to talk about some of that stuff on these reactions. Totally with you. D-Nice77 says Mara has his hands on this Jones re-sign. The reason his contract is only guaranteed for 2 years tells you Schoen and Daboll don't believe in this guy. I mean, if anybody would have gave Daniel Jones any type of guaranteed money past the 2 years, they would have been looked at even crazier than they were looked at for signing this guy for the contract that they did. I'm with you, though, D-Nice. I definitely hear you on that. Let me see. Victor Castro says, I like you, Authentic, but think of this statement right quick, and I want you to answer it honestly. Well, where's the statement? I'm not too sure what exact statement that was, Victor. Let me see. I'm going to scroll and see if you reiterated it here. Oh, yeah, you did. Shout out to Victor one time. Victor said, we did everything to screw this kid up. Who made this statement, and when was it made? So John Mara made that statement, and it was made after it was made multiple times, actually. 2 times I can remember. One time was when they went into the 2021 draft and they drafted Kadarius Toney and they brought in Kenny Galladay and they talked about the lack of weapons. The other time was after the Minnesota Vikings playoff win and the Philadelphia Eagles loss, where they tried to validate themselves for bringing Daniel Jones back for the contract. Now, this is the thing about all of that. To me, a lot of people will say that the New York Giants did everything in their power to screw up Daniel Jones. And I can actually argue the opposite. Who else would have drafted Daniel Jones at number 6? Who else would have allowed Daniel Jones to start as many games as he did and fail through 3 coaching staffs and still keep this guy around as the starting quarterback? Who else would have, after drafting this kid at number 6 and him showing you his true colors and showing you who he is through 2.5 coaches, right? Through multiple offensive coordinators that all of them tried to run this kid when it's very clear that Daniel Jones should not be a read option type of dual threat quarterback in this league. I'm not saying he can't run, but who else after all of that, after never throwing for over 25 touchdowns, after having a bunch of seasons in a row where he could barely throw for over 15 touchdowns and still said, you know what, we'll pay this guy the same amount of money that a guy like Derek Carr is getting with the New Orleans Saints. We'll pay him $40 million after declining his 5th-year option, and we'll allow this guy to walk in to the New York Giants 2024 season as a starting quarterback after 6 years of nothing but mediocrity. That would not happen for any other quarterback in the entire history of the National Football League. Teams are more willing to move on from the quarterback position after 3 years. We saw it with Justin Fields. We saw it with Kenny Pickett. We've seen it with Josh Rosen. We've seen it with Sam Darnold. We saw it with Jameis Winston after he threw for 5,000 yards. One could have looked at the Jameis Winston season and been like, yo, all we got to do is correct this guy's turnover issues and he can be a guy. Instead, the Bucs were like, fuck all of that. And they moved on. We saw it with Marcus Mariota, who damn near had the exact same resume as Daniel Jones. A guy that went out there and showed and proved that he could play decent football, won a playoff game, lost a playoff game with no real weapons at the wide receiver position. He had Delaney Walker, I believe it was, at the tight end position. His leading wide receiver was Rashard Matthews. His running back was, what was my dude's name? Former Dallas Cowboys running back. They relied on the running game. That's all they did, just like Daniel Jones did in 2022. And what did the Tennessee Titans do after that? They didn't say, let's go sign Marcus Mariota to a deal. Let's take his fifth-year option. They said, no, bro. We understand that you are a quarterback that is limited, and your capacity to be elite is not there. Instead, the Giants doubled down on this guy. So for every point that says that the New York Giants did Daniel Jones wrong, there's another point that says no other franchise would have given this guy this kind of an opportunity. None. So to me, I think the New York Giants did Daniel Jones a favor. Yeah, they didn't put wide receiver talent around him like they should have in the beginning of his career, where they only drafted Darius Slayton in the 5th round and brought in Golden Tate to try to be his wide receiver 1. And waited until Daniel Jones was entering his 4th year, I believe it was, 3rd year, to bring in guys like Kenny Galladay. But as soon as it failed with Galladay, and it failed with Kadarius Toney, and it failed with Kyle Rudolph, and it failed with John Ross, they should have nipped this problem in the bud at that particular time. Instead, they brought in another coaching staff and doubled down on their mistakes. And here we are, 6 years later. Literally, the history of this podcast has never seen another starting quarterback at the beginning of the season outside of Daniel Jones. It's pathetic that the New York Giants are running their organization the way that they have. And I don't understand it. 3 years ago, maybe I could have understood it 3 years ago. Right now, there's no way. Shout out to the homie Pal 11 one time. Pal been rocking out with us on Bleacher Report in a major way. Salute to you, bro. Appreciate you pulling up here. Y'all welcome Pal 11 to the gang one time, man. This is a real good dude here. We've talked a lot of ball on Bleacher Report, and he always has a lot of good stuff to say here. He says, so if, and y'all know before I read this one, if was a fifth, we would all be drunk, right? But Pal 11 says, so if, and this is a big if, we are going to restart and go full rebuild, who do you want to hire as GM and coach? Who do you want to trade, and who do you want to keep? I'll keep this a little tight because I don't want to let the cat out the bag for some of these giant overreactions that we're about to get to here in a second. If we were to move on from Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, right now, I actually would consider Brandon Brown as general manager because I think that Brandon Brown has been able to see all the issues. And like I said before, I would love to have known Brandon Brown's opinion on some of these stuff or some of these things that have happened with the New York Giants, especially from like Hard Knocks to now. But if you just read the body language of Brandon Brown, when Joe Schoen looked like he was convincing Brandon Brown that going on with Daniel Jones is the correct move, Brandon Brown didn't look convinced. When you look at even Brian Daboll and Brandon Brown, when they talked about trading up for a guy like Jaden Daniels, where Brian Daboll almost looked like he wasn't even paying attention, and when they said, would you trade up for Jaden Daniels, he was like, oh yeah. They felt the same way about Drake May. There were times where Brandon Brown said, if Daniel Jones is back, this is what we'll do. I think Brandon Brown should at least be a candidate. Now, for me, it's not my job to figure out who the next general manager is supposed to be for the New York Giants or who the next head coach is. But I do think you need to bring in somebody with football expertise to come here and take over for John Mara as far as football decisions go. Because we continuously keep doubling down on young coaches without a real track record. Now, did the same exact thing with a young general manager in Joe Schoen. And we also continue to keep doubling down on people that are attached to the New York Giants franchise, like a Joe Judge, who was a special teams coach that had no business being hired as the head coach for one of the most historic franchises in the history of the game. Did the same thing with Joe Schoen. Failed with Pat Shurmur. A bunch of guys that have ties to the New York Giants and to the New England Patriots. And that's no way to operate as an NFL billion-dollar organization. Players, I think before this deadline, Devin Singletary's a guy. The problem is that Joe Schoen committed to competing. So can he just strip the Band-Aid off this and completely rebuild? I don't think so. And honestly, I think that they have dug themselves a deep hole. You can't trade guys like Dexter Lawrence right now. You can't trade guys like Andrew Thomas right now. Daniel Jones probably has no trade value. Malik Nabers is a guy that you probably shouldn't have drafted, but you can't trade a guy like Malik Nabers. The youthful talent, do you get rid of some of them? I really don't know, pal. I don't know. Would I consider trading guys like Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt? I might. But then you're looking at the product coming into next year and the surroundings around a new quarterback, likely if the New York Giants get a high enough pick, that you're setting that kid up truly for failure. And what likely will end up happening is when the records are so bad for the first 2 years through this new quarterback's campaign, they're going to have to fire some people. And then you're going to put this young quarterback in a situation where he's going to be with a coach that did not draft him, and we're going to be in the same exact position again and again. Unfair to the quarterback, unfair to the fans. And I really don't know. You know, this is one where I ain't got all the answers, Sway. I don't know where to even start, where the New York Giants should commit their time and efforts to trying to improve this team for a long haul at winning and building a team that's going to go out here and compete for championships. I don't know. Big shout out to Powell one time, though. Shout out to Jaden714. Jaden, I appreciate the $4.99 super chat.
Okay.
I almost used one of your tweets on Twitter, I believe as you, as one of the Giant Overreactions today. And I decided to go left on it, but I almost did. Jaden says, Brandon Brown as GM, Jameis Winston to Malik Nabers, Cam Ward on the bench, any leader of men at head coach. This is going to mean something to me. I like that. It's a good answer to what Powell said. And I think you're onto something there. If you can find a better man for the job than Brandon Brown, maybe you keep Brandon Brown around, because everything Brandon Brown has done and his opinions that I have seen seem like a guy the Giants should at least keep in the building. That's not to say you can't get another general manager in here. But if the general manager sees it fit that Brandon Brown should not be a part of this staff, then that's on him. But I like this. At least Jaden got, some kind of direction here. Big shout out to Jaden for supporting the channel and putting a good opinion out there. I agree with a lot of what you're saying there, Jaden. All right, let me catch up here because I know topic-wise we're behind from the chat. And I'm going to try to work my way backwards here a little bit because I know a lot of people are probably chiming in on the last comments that have been made. OG Knockout says, if I were Malik Nabers, I would ask for a trade because this team isn't going to be good for at least 3 years. That's crazy that a guy that played 9 games, and this is not an egregious statement right here, a guy that's played 9 games could be, a candidate that'd be asking to be traded, and not a lot of people would have a lot of issues with it. Shout out to the Illa one time in the building. Really good content creator. I really do encourage y'all to go over there and check him out. The Illa, before I get off into his statement, did a video the day that Joe Schoen was hired. And I really do challenge, it's a 2-part video, I challenge all 151 of y'all that are paying attention to this stream right now to go to the Illa's channel, subscribe to his channel, show him some love, search his channel for Joe Schoen, watch those 2 videos. It's almost like this man is Cleo the Psychic, the way that he predicted the future on Joe Schoen. Here he says, hey, I feel like DJ's been doing his job. He had us on track last year to get Daniels, May, and then DeVito messed that all up, LOL. Jones has us on track now. I don't place blame on him. And that is true. Brian Daboll and Tommy DeVito came out, and I guess that's what they are supposed to do as competitors at the highest level of football. But it did cost us our quarterback last year. We were right there in line, had the number 2 pick lined up with about 9, 10 games in, 7 games remaining, and ended up going on a little bit of a run there with a win in Washington, a win in Green Bay on Monday night, and that did kind of ruin things. And, everything does happen for a reason. I do believe in that. The universe does have a certain type of balance. I truly believe in that, of a yin and a yang, and I think that this kind of had to happen for a reason. Had we have drafted our quarterback into a terrible situation, maybe he ultimately wouldn't be the guy either being in New York. But I think it's important that the New York Giants find a way this next year to get their quarterback, be proactive. I think DeIlla is making some good points there, though, that doing his job, which is what a lot of Giants fans like to say in a different way, which would be a guy putting up under 200 yards, 1 or 2 touchdowns, 3 in this game. Daniel Jones did have the rushing touchdown. That will be doing his job, but it's been tough. It's been tough, and having Daniel Jones at the quarterback position kind of limits us as far as where we can, the kind of goals that we can attain as a football team. Right there with you on that. David Kotler says, Nabers has a great career ahead of him, but he is going to get killed by Jones throwing him into contact before he finishes his rookie contract. Asking for a trade would be smart. I don't want to overreact, but what y'all are saying does make a lot of sense. OG Knockout says, think of all the quarterbacks the Giants passed up on over the last 6 years, half a decade with Daniel Jones. Scratching my head. Yeah, it's been wild. The one that I'm waiting on is Michael Penix. Shout out to Sarah in the building. She's been rocking out with us on a couple of these streams for a long time here. Says, we will give you guys 2 first rounds and a 2026 third rounder for Dexter Lawrence with the big smile. And honestly, that's something that if the Minnesota Vikings, that's Sarah's team, would consider doing the Giants, they have to consider that. You know, that would be something that could spark the rebuild, to be honest. Let me see what else we got. David Lawrence says, I'm not a Giants fan, but Quinn Ewers. I think Quinn Ewers is a decent quarterback, but at this particular moment in time, where we are at as a team, I want a guy that poses a true dual threat at the quarterback position. And I think that Ewers is the kind of quarterback that does a lot of things good, but nothing elite. And that's what I'm kind of worried about. I'm more favoring the 2 first-round draft picks in Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders at this point in time. G-Man 2011 says, this team looked zoned out on Sunday, especially the defense, and Daboll sounded defeated during the presser. I haven't had a chance to go and look at the entire press conference, but I've looked at a bunch of clips from SNY videos on Twitter. They do a good job of chopping up a lot of the key moments. I do want to go back and look at the whole press conference along with the All-22 that on NFL Plus is going to come out sometime today within the next few hours. So I'll definitely get a chance to check that out. Strider says, I want Cam Ward. I hate losing, but we do need a quarterback that can change the franchise. I think Cam Ward is that guy. Totally agree with you. Shout out RedX3R0. Says the Commanders last season was trading everyone and now is in a great spot with the rookie quarterback. That's facts. Turned over that roster in a really good way and that coaching staff as well. Shout out to that coaching staff and Bobby Johnson. John Feliciano came out trolling a New York Giants fan on Twitter just yesterday, and he said, hey, what's up with that terrible coach y'all were talking about? My buddy Mason talked about, he commented on the post, and he said, well, what do you think about Brian Daboll? And John Feliciano said, I think Brian Daboll is great, and he will right this ship. It's just depending on how long it will take. And I respect that opinion, but Brian Daboll has not looked like a great head coach this season in particular. Shout out Bluegrass Picker in the building, says, feel free to thumbs up and subscribe if you dig the vibe. Oh, you dropping bars right there. Shout out Bluegrass, man, representing them Kansas City Chiefs. Still undefeated. I envy you, brother. Shout out Bluegrass one time. RedX3R0 says, Ewers definitely not. Texas fans want to bench him for Manning already. That's true, too. Yep. I'm not as high on Quinn Ewers for sure. Andrew Adams is in the building, says, how have we never drafted any quarterbacks? Like just a shot on somebody later in the draft. Yeah, that is pathetic. I even thought that the Giants could have took a flyer on Malik Willis in the 3rd round that year when Kenny Pickett came out. You know, you've had Spencer Rattler in the 5th round this past draft. Plenty of times where they could have drafted a quarterback at least late, bring in somebody that's going to compete with Daniel Jones. Instead, they coddle the quarterback, which is not the way to do it. David Lawrence says, I'm a Cowboys fan, and we need him. Yeah, David is your Cowboys are in a tough spot. I told the Beard on our last preview show this past week that this was the last time I was picking y'all for a victory, and y'all season is definitely, looking like it's all but over at this moment in time. Y'all going to have to win a ton of games, and your schedule does not help you out, unfortunately. Strider says the saddest thing in life is wasted talent, and the Giants have been doing that for years. That comment makes me think about Jalen Hyatt. And you literally have the fan base saying, maybe Jalen Hyatt's not all that good. Go back and look at his college tape. There's no way you could say that. Victor Castro says that Cam Ward has elite pocket awareness, and I kind of feel like Daboll would excel with him. but I feel like Mara would veto the pick. That would be Mara getting in his own way, and that would be pathetic. Cam Ward is, love his pocket presence. He's so cool, calm, collective in the pocket, makes crazy throws down the field after escaping and evading defenders within the pocket. I'm a big fan of Cam Ward. Been a big fan of Cam Ward for like 3 years now. I had somebody on Twitter say, "Oh, you're finally coming around on Cam Ward." I was like, the fuck are you talking about? I've been talking about Cam Ward not only on our podcast but on Twitter for 3 years now. Shout out to the homie Stan for putting me on to Cam Ward right when he got to Washington State. He's shown that talent for a long time now. Nick P says Daniel Jones will allow the Giants to draft a young quarterback and continue to add to the wide receiver and offensive line room. Hopefully. Mobster Music says, why the fuck Daboll go for 2 when it's not needed? Yeah, I don't understand the analytics of that. A lot of the analytics will say you go for 2 there, and when you get the 2, that way when you go and you score the next touchdown, it'll be a go-ahead extra point that'll just win the game and make things easy for you. And if not, you still have the opportunity to go for 2. I don't think it's like the most brain-dead type of decision, but I'm with you, Mobster. I would never go for 2 in that situation, especially with a lot of time left on the clock. You end up not getting the 2, and then the Commanders end up getting a field goal, and now you're in the situation where you're forced to go for 2 when you score on the next touchdown. It's just all bad. Shout out Unofficially Retired Podcast says, I think it makes sense, Nabers asking for a trade. But I believe if we get a quarterback, Nabers will be fine. Most wide receivers just care about their numbers. I don't think that that's the case with Malik Nabers as far as the numbers. I do agree with what you said about the trade there. I think that Malik Nabers is a guy that cares about winning. Doesn't this remind you of Odell Beckham Jr.? Out in the media, kind of speaking a little bit too much, talking about not having the right players around, insinuating towards the culture. I think these guys just want to win because they come from winning. And when you get to losing when you're so used to winning, I feel for these young players, man. There's no out for them but to just go out there and try to play their hardest. And sometimes that is just not enough. David Kotler says, I like Cam Ward, but to me it seems his arm is a little weak. Ooh, I disagree with that. I don't see the heat needed in the NFL behind his passes. Everything else about him is NFL ready, in my opinion. I like the take. I feel you on the heat velocity, especially on some of the intermediate throws. He's a guy that does win with the anticipation and touch. I like this take. I do think the Cam Ward has the necessary arm strength down the field, but I think velocity could be a little bit of an issue right now. He still has not entered his true adult body yet, I feel like, either. I think he could get stronger, and I think he could get bigger. I forget how old Cam Ward is, but still has some time to be able to get stronger and be able to add to that velocity. A lot of people, look at Jalen Hurts as a guy that doesn't have much arm talent, but that's the one thing that I like about Jalen Hurts is the touch on the deep ball, but more importantly, the intermediate throws, the velocity that he has on those type of throws. I like that. He doesn't have the big arm going down the field like an Anthony Richardson or a Joe Milton, but he plays with anticipation, and the touch on the fade, amazing. One of the better quarterbacks at that. Let me see what else we got here. OG Knockout says that the Giants will not draft a black quarterback unless John Mara is removed. The best of the best quarterbacks right now are 2 black quarterbacks coming into this draft. And if the Giants do have the opportunity to draft a quarterback, let's say a top 5 pick, and one of these guys is sitting there for the taking, I'll agree with you on this, OG Knockout, if they don't take one this year. And they're in position. We'll see what happens. Problem says it's a shame that Daniel Jones has truly lowered the standard of Giants football. He has. I agree with that. And our fan base is gullible, and I don't understand why they would fall for that. Every week, they just want to say it's not that guy's fault. Strider says, authentic, did we have 3rd and 18 and allowed a first down? How in the hell does that happen? The Giants usually do that almost every game. We did, and I think that was on the Austin Eckler play. I believe that was. And that was something that dates all the way back to Wink Martindale, where Wink was really good on 1st and 2nd down, but 3rd and long was his kryptonite. You saw the screen plays, the short, quick hitters to wide receivers, always putting the Giants defense in a situation to give up big chunks on 3rd and long. And that's something you got to look at, I think, as it's personnel. It's not necessarily philosophy, because we've seen the same results underneath two different defensive coordinators. So it just makes things tough. Hermit Rob says, no one coming off 2 first-rounders for defensive line. That's not true. Go back and look at the first trade with Khalil Mack that gave up 2 first-rounders for him. We have never seen somebody this dominant even being considered to be traded as far as the interior defensive lineman, but I think that when you play to the level that a guy like Dexter Lawrence does, I think that 2 teams would consider it. A team that needs that kind of help right now, like the Minnesota Vikings, they're not going to need a quarterback here. You could do a swap, first-round swap, and also, a future first-rounder as well, push one into the future, because teams like that are thinking about winning now. So I would never say never. Unofficially Retired Podcast says, do you believe we have to trade up for Cam Ward if the draft order stays that same? We're going to talk about that on the Giant Overreaction. Hang tight. We'll get to that. Short answer is no. The Giants are bad enough, I think. Sarah says, I'm good at rock, paper, scissors. I feel you on that. Let me see. Red X3R0 says, Sarah, if you take Daniel Jones for a bag of chips, we have a deal. Y'all funny, yo. Let me see. Dilla said, authentic. What would you realistically trade Dexter Lawrence for in terms of draft capital? Obviously, we're not moving him, but moving him for a bag of chips and a bottle of soda pop. I love when people call soda pop. That's some down south type shit. Midwest vibes. 2 first-rounders. 2 first-rounders, I'd consider it. A first-rounder and some players from a bad team, I would even consider it. I might not take it, but I'd consider it. Valentino says, I remember you and another creator were gatekeeping Cam Ward. Yeah, with the laughing emoji. That's me and Bad Dog. Big shout out to Bad Dog. I was trolling Bad Dog this past week, along with Entertainer, with some old takes on Daniel Jones from them. But yeah, me and Bad Dog, we've been talking Cam Ward for years. Been talking it. And yeah, Talking Eco right behind it says, Bad Dog and you were harping on Cam Ward for forever. Yeah, we did, man. Big shout out to Bad Dog. I got to have Bad Dog on the channel sometime soon. It's been a while. I hope everything with him is going well. Haven't had a chance to check out his latest video. I saw it was something like the New York Giants suck or something like that. So we'll see. I'll try to catch up on his video after the stream. But yeah, that's all facts right there. Chris, how we say this? Chris M. I'm not too sure how to say that. Macon says the Giants will not draft a black quarterback, in my opinion. I'm not going to disagree with you yet. We'll see how it goes this draft. Young Yab is in the building. I haven't seen Young Yab. Shout out to Young Yab. Says, worst thing that could happen is Cowboys picking top 10. We got to hope they can sneak out a couple of wins with their backup quarterback laughing my ass off. Yeah, we do. You want the Dallas Cowboys to stay in purgatory if you're a New York Giants fan especially. Let me see. OG Knockout says NFL players' careers die when they come to New York. Yep. It's been like that as of recent. It definitely has. Y'all are on fire with the comments today. OG said that Cam Ward is showing more upside in college than Daniel Jones did. Absolutely. Absolutely. Victor Castro said one issue with the Jalen Hyatt college tape, the gimmick offense they ran from him, lining him up at trips with him behind the line, giving him free releases since they schemed him open. So why can't the New York Giants do that, right? Jalen Hyatt is absolutely more suited to be in the middle of the offense, right? Like in the slot position. But the Giants, one, the quarterback position is so bad that they can't spread out. They got to run these tighter formations in 12 and 13 personnel rather than having 4 wide receiver sets like what you're seeing out of Cliff Kingsbury with the Washington Commanders and Jaden Daniels at the quarterback position, a guy who's mobile, a guy who can buy time. A lot of people have said that Brian Daboll, in particular, has an offense that takes too long for the routes to develop down the field. And I went back and I looked at a lot of 2022 tape from Josh Allen, or I'm sorry, a lot of 2020 tape from Josh Allen when Brian Daboll was over there with the Bills. And Josh Allen just did a great job of, taking a 5-step or even a 7-step drop at times and finding ways to just manipulate the pocket and buy time so that the routes could develop down the field. He was the saving grace for Brian Daboll. And now with Daniel Jones at quarterback and the way that this offensive line has functioned Brian Daboll is stuck. He has no answers to be able to get the ball down the field. I see so many times where I could compare the same kind of route concepts that Brian Daboll is running in New York to what they were doing in Buffalo, where they would run like crossing routes with big, deep posts, scissors concept type of stuff. Jaden Daniels' favorite play with the slot from the fade from the slot. Deep dagger concepts where you can hit that backside dig or you can hit the go ball from the slot. We can't do that in New York. And it's not really on one person, but I think a lot of it has to do with Daniel Jones at the quarterback position, the way that this offensive line is set up, and Brian Daboll's inability to figure out a way for Daniel Jones to buy time. So I agree with you. There was some gimmick offense there. You could look at Troy Franklin the same exact way. And I think that they're finding ways to get him the ball in Denver right now. But it's not like Jalen Hyatt is a rookie here. And we saw with Tyrod Taylor at the quarterback position that Jalen Hyatt saw success. I think it's the inability of the quarterback to be able to hang in the pocket a certain way and buy a little bit of time to make those throws down the field. I think that's the number one factor, but not the only factor. G-Men 2011 says, we scored 22 points and some people acting like we are prime Brady DeMoss. So sad that this is the standard we are playing to. Yeah. Yeah, the Daniel Jones only has 2 games where the Giants have scored over 24 points at home in his entire career is the craziest stat I've ever heard. Right next to 41 straight games without having back-to-back performances with 2 passing touchdowns. It's inexplicable. There's no explanation for it. AG said Ward over Shadur Sanders. The drama in Dion being in New York is not a good look. I've got Ward over Shadur Sanders, but it's not because of the drama. Like, honestly, you need that. I'm actually sick of the Giants' way. Like, my boy D. Brown, who is a former New York Giants fan, converted to a Washington Commanders fan now. And he's not even living in D.C. or nothing like that. He just likes what's going on in Washington. But he told me that after a decade of dysfunctional front office moves, personnel moves, play on the field, you name it, that the Giants had the nerve to go out there and put up some shirts for the team that said our way. The Giants need to take that our way shit, ball it up, and throw it out. I'm so sick of trying to get players that are the good guy, goody two-shoes type of dudes to represent this franchise. I want dogs. I want dogs that you need to tame them on the leash, right? That maybe they do go out there in a press conference and say some wild statements in front of the media that make the coach go, I can't wait until Dan Duggan gets a second shot at interviewing Brian Daboll again, because I want to know how Brian Daboll feels about the Malik Nabers comments. I want to know if Brian Daboll has the guts to address those, to say, well, look, Malik Nabers is saying like, yo, y'all are calling too many runs on the offensive side of the ball. And in return, that's limiting what the Giants can do offensively without balance. I want to see what Brian Daboll has to say about that. I think that will be an interesting conversation. Let me see. Jester's in the building, says the same thing happened in matchup 1. They hit a long third down play across the middle for the go-ahead field goal win. Yep. And the Giants continuously making mistakes down the stretch of the game. Yeah, tough. And I think Daniel Jones still kind of has that thing of like playing well against Washington, because it was a decent game from him. It wasn't good enough in my opinion, but it was a decent game. Hermit Robb said he would take a first rounder and a starter maybe for, I believe that's for Dexter Lawrence. Charles Barkley in the building talking about Bad Dog. Yes. Shout out New York Revival in the building. Another squad of Giants content creators y'all need to sub up to. Shout out to them, man. I'm not sure who it is behind the account right now, but shout out to all 3 of y'all. Strider says that with each L we have seen from the Giants have been hell. Mind-numbing and soul-sucking. Painful to watch. For your information, I feel like the Giants have been a laughing stock since 2013. They really have. Outside of a couple of years, they really have. Yeah, if it wasn't for those 2 Super Bowls with Eli Manning, could you imagine? Like, imagine if we had to go through the Eli Manning era of 500 football without the Super Bowls, where we would be today. Thank God for those teams. Strider says, authentic, I used to say that about the Raiders and Bengals and Browns. Now it's the Giants. Is sad. Yep. Sarah says, authentic, would you consider getting a bridge quarterback for the next year and draft Archie Manning? I don't think Archie Manning will be coming out in 2026. I actually think it'll be 2027. I can't wait that long. I'd rather get a bridge along with drafting the quarterback in this next draft. And if you can't deal with a bridge quarterback for just one season, draft a quarterback the following season. Maybe even trade for a guy like Hendon Hooker and bring in a bridge quarterback like a Sam Darnold or somebody of that kind of caliber. But I can't wait till 2027 to bring in Archie Manning. Unofficially Retired Podcast says, how should I evaluate Daboll? Because I like Daboll, but every time I come on here, you open my eyes to new flaws that I didn't notice. I think Brian Daboll might be better suited as an offensive coordinator in this league. And we've seen two totally different approaches to offense with Brian Daboll as far as the results. Like, out of this world with Josh Allen, poor results with Daniel Jones. I think he's somewhere in the middle of that. Shout out to El Jefe one time, representing New York Revival, says, I miss being shattered by Giants losses. Ain't that crazy? Yeah, like I really missed that too, like losing on a 63-yard field goal to win the game, and it actually hurts, right? Now when we lose on a game-winning field goal or a game-winning drive, I'm just like, at times I even feel myself like rooting against my own team. Like, please don't win this game because we need a damn quarterback in a draft. And I was never like that. You know, all throughout my 20s and my 30s, every New York Giants loss hurt me to the core. There were times where I was damn near hurdling my dining room table over losses. The beard will vouch for that. My lady can vouch for that. Like, Sundays in my household used to be like, man, I have 2 cats. They would be running because I was screaming. I would be doing all kind of stuff, running across my living room. You know, I would be praying that the Giants could make a play on a certain down and distance situation to get a victory for our team. And when it didn't happen, those losses actually mattered. And now they are not. I got a breaking report here that Dak Prescott will be out multiple weeks with the hamstring injury. Dallas Cowboys are cooked. Dallas Cowboys are cooked. Strider said, authentic, bro, I want to give Daboll the benefit of the doubt, but the losing and, yes, having Daniel Jones doesn't help. Daboll might be gone. It wouldn't surprise me. I feel like we're seeing what Brian Daboll looks like when the situation is at its worst and he is at his worst, which that is not a good combination. When your team, personnel, philosophy, direction, productivity on the field is at its worst, you want to see your head coach at his best. These next couple of weeks for Brian Daboll are going to be telling. If you go out there to Germany and you lose that game to the Carolina Panthers, that seat is going to be literally on fire. I'm worried for Brian Daboll for sure, and I'm not somebody that calls for people to be fired normally. But if the Giants do go out there and fire Brian Daboll, it might be a reasonable decision to make right now. Tank said that Archie Manning looked terrified against Georgia. Also says he's not coming out of college until his senior year. He's currently a redshirt freshman. Yeah, I know some people that cover Texas, and they talked about that. Archie Manning won't be out till at least 2027. OG said that the Giants need a bridge quarterback like Cooper Rush or someone a rookie quarterback can learn from besides Daniel Jones. I agree with you on that. Yeah, the chat been flying. AG said, good point. But even talent-wise, Ward is still over Shadur. But if week 4 Shadur goes and says the loss is on the O-line, I feel like that can fuck us up even more. Yeah, I mean, those are things that I think in college you might be able to get away with, but in the NFL at the quarterback position, the standard of what you are held to or the way that you have to go and talk to media and really be vague and really take responsibility for everything that's going wrong with the team is something that a quarterback has to do normally on all levels of football. And I thought, I disagreed with how Shadur Sanders handled that situation where he threw his offensive line under the bus. But I think that sometimes that can have a current player that's on your team maybe perform better. Sometimes people need to be called out. And if your fellow teammate has a bad game and you say he had a bad game, that's something you don't want to hear from the quarterback position. But I think that this is a new day and age, and these young boys are very different. You see it with Malik Nabers now, and we're going to get to that in these overreactions. I wanted to do that like 15 minutes ago, but so many good comments coming through in the chat. Shout out to the beard one time. I see you, fam. Ooh, I see y'all talking about Daboll and Malik's relationship. Yup, this is facts right here. Daboll and Schoen knew how Malik was. Even Nabers said how he was going to react. So we shouldn't be surprised by his comments because we know how he felt about Daniel Jones before the draft. Absolutely. Shout out my dog, Tommy Football, one time in the building. He says, I'm not that high on any of the quarterbacks in the draft this year, but if I had to pick one, it would be Shedeur. It would be a roller coaster if nothing else, but I think he actually has good potential. Yeah, NFL ready from the pocket, especially. I like Shedeur Sanders. It's the escapability to me that's not there. I do question some of his arm talent. You know, some of the same concerns that homie had about Cam Ward as well. I question some of that stuff more with Shedeur Sanders, but I think they're both good enough quarterbacks to be able to build around. Shedeur Sanders actually kind of reminds me of Spencer Rattler a little bit. I ain't gonna lie. He's got better arm, a ball placement with his arm. And I think he's a bit more accurate, but they play the game similar to me. Januel, I believe this is. I'm gonna call you JG for the day so I don't butcher it. What are your feelings in getting a corner piece in the first and a quarterback like Milroe or Dart in the second? I'm a big fan of Jackson Dart. I like his game. Very accurate. He throws the fade ball like Jalen Hurts a bit to me. At this point, I wouldn't complain about any draft that leaves with a quarterback. I wouldn't complain. Let's say you could get a weapon in the first like Travis Hunter and then bring in Jackson Dart. I'd feel great about that. I really would. That's a good, I love this question right here. This is a really good question, JG. Tommy Football says, if Lions got Dexter Lawrence, somehow it's a wrap. They'd be unstoppable. Yeah. And then think about that going into next year when you get back Aiden Hutchinson. Oh, my God. Yeah, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. Tank Zappa says, I draft a quarterback every season in Madden. You always find a better guy when you keep taking chances. I love that. That's a great way to apply a video game concept to real life. Like, a lot of people are like, leaving 2022, what else were the Giants supposed to do besides, commit to Daniel Jones? It's draft a damn quarterback. And then if it doesn't work, you draft another quarterback. I used to have a bunch of conversations with Entertainer about that. And Entertainer would just be like, well, what if it doesn't work out when you draft that quarterback in the first round? You draft another one. Look at how the Cardinals did it. You're not wasting that much money by spending first-round capital on a quarterback. If it don't work out in 2 years, bring in another one. It's only costing you upwards of $20 million. The Illa says, man, authentic, I started Washington's defense in fantasy yesterday. Said to myself, damn, I hate doing this, but I have to. Yeah. Look, I almost put some money down on Washington. There was a bet out there on FanDuel that with the Commanders minus 13, the odds were like plus 400. I was like, this seems like free money, but Giants end up covering that. Because the Commanders ended up kneeling the ball down on the 1 yard line instead of punching it into the end zone. But it was the right move for them, obviously. Young Yab says, I pry Ben Johnson away from Detroit, and I'd be fine with firing Daboll, but we know that ain't happening. Yeah, I think Ben Johnson would probably be in a better position to go back to Detroit until they win a Super Bowl. He's in a really good position there, and he's a big reason why they're winning a lot of games. D Nice said Januel Dones. Yeah. Yeah, man. Jaden said Shedeur reminds me of Burrow and Ward reminds me of Geno Smith. I'm not mad at that comp. I like that. I definitely like that. Shout out to Joe Winograd one time. He's been rocking out with us for a long time. With the $5 super chat. Okay. Joe says, Deion Sanders went on Nightcap with Unc and Ocho, and low-key alluded to the idea that him and Shedeur might be going to the Raiders. Joe, let me know if that's on the latest one that they did, or if those are the comments that came out a couple of months back. I'll try to keep an eye, maybe at me in the chat so I can maybe see that. If that's new, I would love to see that. I do remember them kind of saying something about it a couple of months back about the Raiders being an option and kind of like ruling out a few teams that, I remember Deion saying something like, we're pretty much going to pull an Eli Manning here. We're not just going to any old team. So we'll see how that goes. The Raiders are absolutely going to be a team that's in the quarterback market here going into the 2025 draft. So, you got to just pray that they lose, less games than the New York Giants do. And there are other teams too. The New Orleans Saints might be in that ballpark as well. They just fired Dennis Allen today. They've lost 7 straight games. And we're gonna talk about all those situations here when we get into this overreaction here. Pal said, and Joe, I appreciate the super chat. I really do. Thank you, bro. Pal says, unless we have a Detroit Lions type offensive line, then Sanders might not work. Cam Ward, better escapability and throwing while moving. Yes, that's why I like him. I think that he can mask some deficiencies better than Shedeur Sanders. Tank Zappa said that Shedeur got Deion's arm, but not his legs. I know, that's the genes didn't carry on. It's interesting how genes are passed down. I've always said that too, yo. Like, he definitely didn't get the speed gene from him. It's the weirdest thing ever. But he's definitely a good quarterback. I like his skill set. Berg said that the Niners drafted 2 quarterbacks and went to the Super Bowl with the second one. The Washington Commanders did the same thing in the same draft, which is crazy. Crazy. Charles Barkley said that unfortunately real-life draft picks don't come pre-packed with game-changer badges and superstar progression traits. Yeah, that's a good point. Shout out my dog, Chris Peace, one time in the building. Chris Peace was at the game in MetLife. He says authentic is in his bag. Drafting Rosen didn't stop them from drafting Murray. Yeah, you got to do those kind of things. You really do. You really do. You really do. Unofficially Retired Podcast said, I definitely think Sanders is a Raider. Met with Mark Davis at the Aces game, and Brady, who is his mentor, also now is part owner of the Raiders. Seems clear-cut, but we know this is the NFL. Who knows? Yeah, because I almost thought that J.J. McCarthy was going to be a Giant. The way that he was talking on the Rich Eisen show, it almost seemed like it was a foregone conclusion that J.J. McCarthy was a Giant. Very interesting. Royal Money Entertainment said Shedeur Sanders to New York with the praying emojis. I'm with you on that. Yeah, either one of these quarterbacks. And Sarah said that Deion hinted to Shedeur going to Miami as well. We'll see how things pan out. I do think, a lot of people think that a big market quarterback has to be of the personality of a guy like Eli Manning, quiet, say all the right shit. I think the opposite would be something to experiment with. A guy that's just like got that Cam Newton to him, which is what I think Shedeur Sanders has to him. And just goes, fuck everything y'all are saying. I'm going to go out here and put pen to paper and get this team in a better position to win games. And then it won't matter. We had a deep discussion on Twitter Spaces the other day, and shout out to everybody who was a part of this conversation. A lot of people saying some really good points in that conversation. And we were talking about culture. And I challenged them in that chat because a lot of them were talking about, the Giants don't have a culture here. They don't have the guys in the locker room. They don't have the leaders. When you're losing games the way that the Giants have been losing games over the better part of the decade, you're not going to have a culture. Culture is synonymous with winning. You will not have a good culture if you're not winning games. Find me one. I'm old enough to remember the Tampa Bay Buccaneers during the 80s and the New England Patriots and the Cleveland Browns through the 90s. And the Detroit Lions during the Matthew Stafford era and before that. They were the laughingstock of the NFL. There's no way that those teams could have good culture with the way that they were losing games. The Cleveland Browns tried to draft a quarterback every goddamn year. They were trying to draft a quarterback, bring in another one. None of them working. From the Brandon Whedons to, I forget the homie that was out of Notre Dame, talks ball real, Brady Quinn, Johnny Manziel. What was my dude from Miami? What was my dude's name? They drafted another quarterback too, and then number two too. What was my dude? He was drafted number 1 overall. He wore number 2. Tim Couch. Thank you, Bluegrass. Tim Couch, who they thought was going to save the franchise. None of these quarterbacks worked out, but I do commend them for continue to keep trying, right? But at the end of the day, you don't have culture if you don't have wins. So you got to get the right people to come in here and win games. I remember they tried that wide receiver at quarterback as well. He was a wide receiver that converted to quarterback. He came from the Raiders. He had one good year with the Raiders. They tried him as well in Cleveland. Nothing could work for them. Nothing. If you can't win, you don't have culture. To me, culture is one of those made-up words that just describe a locker room that's happy. You know, look at the New England Patriots. They were a dynasty for like 15 to 17 years and won all of those championships. Everyone said, man, they got culture over there. They lost Tom Brady in 2020 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Bill Belichick couldn't get it right without Tom Brady. And then do you think they were leaning on that locker room saying, but they still got the culture? Robert Kraft was like, bump that. Get rid of these dudes. The NFL is a results-based business. Bottom line, shout out to Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley, not a role model. He said Pryor was a quarterback that converted. Yup, Terrell Pryor. I had some hope for that kid, too, because when he had that 1 year, he looked all right. You know, and I see Deaton Shelton brings up a good point here, too, about culture as discipline, too. If we don't have discipline at this level of professional sports, you know you got the wrong people. You know you got the wrong people. And I thought that Joe Judge came in and tried to implement that style of coaching where it was very tough, Tom Coughlin-like, which Tom Coughlin even had to change his ways. Sometimes you need your players in the locker room to just be happy to come to work. You don't want to create this environment that is military-based necessarily, and I'm not saying that can't work either. Building a culture and building a locker room is about as hard as raising kids. And you have to find a way, but there is different ways to do it. Like, listen, I came up in a Haitian household. It was not easy. It was not like, yo, you go to school and get good, you get bad grades, and you was going to come home and get grounded. No, sir. My parents was strict. It was no nonsense. And I thought that it helped me as an adult to be accountable, you know, for not only myself, but the people around me. But that's not to say that that's the only way to do it. And the same thing goes for an NFL organization. There's different ways to build a ball club, build a roster, build an organization's culture. The Giants just, unfortunately, haven't found a way to do that. Shout out to Dean one time in the building with the $4.99 super chat. Okay. Dean says, late to the stream, so I'm running it back from the top. Make sure to put it on 2x speed. You'll hear me in my Micro Machines voice, but it'll get you caught up. He says, us beating Carolina and Germany is not a given by any means. Respect as always. Big respect to you too, Dean. I appreciate you supporting the channel. And there are some people that are looking at the Carolina Panthers as that's one of the wins you could chalk up for the New York Giants getting this year. And I mean, the Carolina Panthers are coming off a gutsy win just yesterday. We're favored for the first time in a long time in that game. I wouldn't go into that game thinking that that's a foregone W for the Giants as well. I think you're spot on here, Dean. I see you, man, in the profile pic. Looking fresh, my dog. I appreciate you supporting the channel, man. Appreciate that big time. That goes a long way. Sarah says, authentic, the Vikings have a GoPro attached to Sam Darnold's helmet so J.J. McCarthy can get the video feeds of plays as he rehabs and develops from the sideline as a part of his developmental process. That's amazing. I know that the Commanders are experimenting with Jaden Daniels doing the VR stuff too, which is awesome. Like, think about that. You can take that digital content back to all the quarterbacks and show that to them for years to come. That's not something that could just be for a J.J. McCarthy. That could be for all the quarterbacks you sign from that point on. Like, this is what it's going to look like when we run this particular play with Kevin O'Connell at the head coach position and calling the plays. I love it. Take advantage of the technology and utilize it as an asset to your organization. That more teams need to jump on that trend. I'm glad I saw that statement. That's great. I didn't know that. And wait till that footage when we start getting some bootlegs, you know, and we start pirating some of that stuff, right? That'll be crazy to be able to get. Imagine they leak that and we could get our hands on some Sam Darnold footage from the GoPro. Oh, that would be amazing. I'm all about that. If anybody going to find that, it's going to be me. Salute to Sarah. Salute to my dog, Ben Ball. You in the building one time, man. Yeah, I'm going to give you those even though you didn't drop one. Says, love this show. That's my day one homie right there, Commanders fan. Big salute to you. Yeah, I see my Zoes in the building too. Shout out my Zoes in the building. Y'all know what it is. Yes. Bluegrass Picker says, great idea. Speaking on the GoPro film. And I'm so glad I saw that comment because that's absolutely a fantastic idea. Yeah, Tank Zappa saying Terrell Pryor, when you catch up, go 2 times, Tank, you'll catch up. Let me see, and then we're going to get to these giant overreactions here in a second. I've been saying that for 30 minutes. It's just so much good stuff in the chat. Let me see. Deilla said that Jalen Coker messed up my parlay yesterday. Man had 36 yards on 2 catches, 16 minutes in. He received 1 more target over the next 3 quarters, scratching my head. His receiving prop was 37.5. I saw some people lost some money on Jalen Waddle, too, when he caught that last pass and ran backwards for like 24 yards, man. Like, yeah, very – that's why I try to stay away from the betting as much as I can. Yeah, and there are going to be some trades that pop in. It says the Broncos signed pass rusher Jonathan Cooper to a 4-year contract extension over the weekend. That's the latest news from Adam Schefter. Let me see. King Ade 2117 says, should we trade Hyatt or Slayton? I would consider both. Charles Barkley says that's kind of embarrassing for Sam, though. Maybe. You know, when you mic'd up, you got to watch what you do. We got to watch what you say when they got that GoPro on you as well. Yeah, and Red X doubling down on the AI goggles. Yeah, I loved it. He could. I remember when I was looking at his tape and some of his interviews. That's one thing I encourage people to do is when you look at tape, also look at players' interviews from college. You'll get a gist of the character. I did that with a lot of these players I was scouting, Jaden Daniels being one of them, and he credited the VR. Technology to the difference in his season. It was the biggest difference for him in his last year at LSU. Brian Porras, who actually went to Duke. I saw you've been a little quiet, the last couple of weeks here on social media, says this loss is on the defense. At the end of the day, this loss is on the team, right? The quarterback is part of it. I know you want to dismiss that. Daniel Jones is your guy. And you continue to say Sanchez was right about Daniel Jones. He wasn't. Like, Daniel Jones was not fighting for his life. Towards the end of the game, I'll say a couple of plays there. But listen, man, I don't say this much. And I have never said on the channel that Daniel Jones is like a terrible quarterback. But somehow in certain Giants fans' minds, like Brian, he thinks that Daniel Jones is an elite quarterback that doesn't have the right pieces around him. It's clear as day, my guy. When you have to have everything perfect around your quarterback to win games, like that game yesterday, he's not the guy. Simple as that. You'll look at the box score in the end of the game and say Daniel Jones accounted for 3 total touchdowns, but this game was lost in the first half. When you don't capitalize on the windows early on and you allow on a screenplay, you don't even, bro, you don't even see quarterbacks deal with these type of situations. None in the NFL. And I can think of 2 where on a screenplay, Daniel Jones makes the most boneheaded type of play. And I get it. That's your guy. The reason why you're a New York Giants fan is because of Daniel Jones being drafted out of Duke. And I get it. You watched him there and all that, and that will influence your opinion. Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback. And I have not said that a lot on this channel. There's a few fans like Brian left that are still rooting for Daniel Jones. At this point in time, none of it matters. If the Giants don't move on from Daniel Jones, and if they don't proactively make that decision or have already made it, they are being idiotic. To continue to invest in that particular quarterback was already a stupid move, and if they continue to do it with the data that has already been presented, it's even more of a stupid move. He does not throw touchdowns on a consistent basis. It's that simple. He'll never be elite. I can confidently say that. And I don't even place those type of standards on people because I don't want to doubt man. But we've seen enough data here. And if Daniel Jones can go on to be an elite quarterback somewhere else, good riddance. I don't care at this point. Because thus far, he's been a bad quarterback. He's been a guy that has gotten not only offensive coordinators, but head coaches fired because he's not good enough to get the job done. And yesterday's performance was not good enough to get the job done. You're going up against an offense in the Washington Commanders that it's imperative that you put up points and capitalize on as many opportunities as you possibly can. The only benefit of the doubt that I give Daniel Jones from yesterday is that Brian Daboll did not put him in position to, one, play winning football, and two, expose him for the weak quarterback that he truly is. Stuart Daniels says, honestly, believe that Giants would have drafted Jaden Daniels if he were available. They would have. Responding to NYG drafting black quarterbacks, I'm hoping that NYG make the right decision next year. That's a good point, and I'm with you. I do honestly believe that. If we had a shot to draft Jaden Daniels, Brian Daboll, there's no way that he would have walked away from that draft without having that quarterback. They would have forced John Mara to do it. I'm with you on that. Strider says, authentic, he has two nicknames, Screw Danny Dimes, One Drive Jones, or Tale of Two Halves. Missing first half and second half shows up and comes up short. And that elite quarterbacks don't do that. He had 0 passing yards at the first half. And like I said, I think Brian Daboll is at fault as well for that. But he's not the quarterback for this team. It's that simple. And I usually try to come up here and remain I try to remain as PC as possible. But this guy's not the quarterback for this team. He's not the quarterback for this team. And I mean, look at this statement right here. He doesn't have the dog in him. He doesn't, bro. It's so apparent that dude doesn't have the dog in him. What with his play on the field makes you think he has the dog in him? But you are seeing Daniel Jones, and I always make this comparison. There are a lot of people that when they watch boxing, especially when they watch boxing from the standpoint of the boxer representing either their ethnicity or nationality or where they are from, they view boxing from a lens that is only from their boxer. I'll never forget this with the Beard, where I had to convince him of this in 2 fights. It was, I think my dude's name was Ricky Hatton. When Ricky Hatton fought Floyd Mayweather Jr., Ricky Hatton representing for all them Irish folks out there, the Beard is looking at it from a lens strictly of Ricky Hatton. And he's just looking at what he lands. But he doesn't look at the situations where maybe his defense getting him caught and he not seeing the counterpunch from Floyd Mayweather. Same thing happened when he fought, what's the UFC dude? Conor McGregor. Same thing, right? You have to be able to look at things unbiased. And when you say, if you went and polled 1,000 NFL fans that were not New York Giants fans and asked them, is Daniel Jones a dog? They would laugh at the question, bro. That dude is not a dog. That's not to say he's not out there playing his hardest, but that dude's not a dog. A dog is a dude that's screaming in your face when you fucking up on the football field. A dog goes out there when his team is getting their ass kicked and just continuously makes plays. Eli Manning was a fucking dog. This quarterback we got right now ain't no dog. Let's be real here, man. Big shout out to Pal one time, man, for the $4.99 super chat.
Okay.
He says, here we go again with DJ. DJ played decent in DJ standards, which is a low standard. I agree with you. But as a $40 million a year quarterback, he is and has not played well. This is facts. You, like, bro, just take Daniel Jones out of that game and then put Josh Allen on him. You think people would be saying, yo, Josh Allen played elite yesterday for the New York Giants, man. Dude was 4 for 4 at the half, man. His back got against the wall when the team was down by 2 scores, and he had no choice but to go out there and try to fight his best. I'll give him that. He tried to fight his best in the second half, but it's too late at that point. That happens in basketball a lot. You getting dogged, then you start getting a little loose. When you start getting dogged, and you start playing a little better. And that's what we saw out of Daniel Jones in the second half. Big shout out to Pal, man, for supporting the channel with his second super chat of the day. I definitely appreciate that. And let me just make sure I'm caught up. Yeah, we're caught up. Yo, say less. This is we might be reaching a little bit, right? If he is a dog, I give you that. He a poodle, right? He's a Yorkie. Even a Yorkie will bark at you. A poodle gonna give you big bark, right? No bite. Daniel Jones lacking all of that. He lacking all of that. And I see Brian, this will be the last one I go to with this because I don't want to stick on this subject too much. Maybe in year 6, we should be pass blocking by now. Look, man, I sat down with Justin Pugh on a podcast, former offensive lineman who played with Daniel Jones just a season ago. And I asked him, How important do you think a decisive quarterback is to an offensive line success? Because I have a statement that I always say on my podcast that is, a decisive quarterback is an offensive line's best friend. And he said a decisive quarterback is the most important thing to the success of an offensive line. Why you think the offensive line has been trash for the whole time that he's been here? They have replaced left tackle, left guard, center, guard, right tackle multiple times with multiple players and still have not been able to fix that. Did you see the way this offensive line looked in the first 5 games of this season? The only offensive line unit where the starting 5 was the same through the first 5 games was the New York Giants. Daniel Jones was sacked 2 times yesterday. What are we saying? He has poor lateral movement, no agility within the pocket. He had one play where I was like, damn, looked like 2019 version of Daniel Jones. He looked a little nimble on his feet. But, man, we got to be the most delusional set of the fans. And I'm not trying to attack you, Brian, but we got to be the most delusional to be going into year 6 talking about what about the O-line? What are we doing? Come on, man. Tommy Football said, Irish, Ricky Hatton, how dare you? Mate, me and you having words after this, but admittedly, Floyd demolished him. Build up to that fight was incredible. It was good times. Big shout out Tommy one time in the building. All right, so we, an hour and 40 in, we got to get to these giant overreactions. Y'all know, man, I could talk ball with y'all till the sun come up for tomorrow morning. Y'all know that. But we have to get into these giant overreactions. And I think we'll talk about a lot of the stuff that you guys are going to be talking about here in the chat. So we got 4 to go. Let me make sure these are all in right order. Yes, they are. Let's start off with the coaching staff. Let's get off into the first giant overreaction. All right, shout out to the homie Big Blue LOLs. He said, wanting to keep a GM and head coach around because you are afraid of change is not the answer. Now, I know where most of y'all are going to go with this one. I think this one is not going to split the room, and we'll all be pretty much in agreement on this one. He continued to say, you are arguing to keep them because you hope that they are good. Change isn't the problem. It is the result of the problem, which is hiring people who are bad at their jobs. I 1,000% agree with this statement because there are a lot of people, one of them came into our Twitter spaces the other day and said, we can't keep firing coaches every year. You know, we need continuity in the building, and we got to find out who these guys are. And I've continued to say this, that we don't need to find out who Brian Daboll is. We saw who Brian Daboll is with a franchise quarterback. We've seen him with a poor quarterback in Daniel Jones, and we saw the results of both of those 2 situations. So you don't have to wait for Brian Daboll to get his quarterback to figure out the evaluation on him as a head coach. I think I kind of know who Brian Daboll is right now. Needs a quarterback that's going to be able to extend plays, needs a quarterback that's going to be able to buy time. But the results are in, and the reality is the reality. The Giants now are on a 4-game losing streak. The Giants are now 0-5 at home. The Giants scored over 20 points for the 3rd time all year. 22 points this past week, which was the 2nd highest output of the year. That's pathetic. The Giants have been underdogs in 24 straight games, and they're finally going to go to Germany against the Carolina Panthers and not be the underdog in their first game in 24 outings. They've been 2-7 or worse to start the year for the 6th time in the past 8 seasons. You got 1 playoff appearance in the last 8 years. The Giants are 8-18 since the start of last season, Brian Daboll. Our offense has been ranked at the bottom 3rd of the league for 3 straight seasons, 24th, 32nd, and 26th. Brian Daboll is 11-23-1 since the 6-2 start in 2022, which was truly the productivity of Saquon Barkley. And now Brian Daboll has a record of 17-25-1 as the head coach of the New York Giants. Connor Hughes brought up a really great point in a tweet that he put out yesterday, pointing the finger at Joe Schoen. He says the Giants screamed from the rafters that the main thing that derailed their 2023 season was the Andrew Thomas injury. How do you go into this year with no contingency plan for the same exact thing happening? Really? Right? You lose Andrew Thomas now for another season, and the Giants are scrambling at the offensive line. They need a Donald Trump-like wall in front of Daniel Jones for him to succeed, because this offensive line that we have put out there has been enough for us to be able to go out there and be successful on offense. But still, we can't win games. We can't score points. We can't sustain drives. And when we do sustain drives, they end up in field goals. Your top 10 draft pick at right tackle is sitting on the bench right now. And instead, you opt to go with Joshua Zedu, another one of your failed draft picks, and Chris Hubbard, who have both been terrible at the left tackle position, after you yourself said that Patrick Mahomes couldn't win behind that offensive line. But you're going to go out there and wheel out Daniel Jones, who's not good enough to win in front of many offensive lines in the entire National Football League. And you're going to put him out there in front of this banged up offensive line and expect different results? I can't wait until these beat reporters start asking more of the right questions. And I'm relying on Pat Leonard and Dan Duggan and people like Connor Hughes to do that. I don't even got to tap in with the chat. I know what y'all are saying in the chat. There's no way that just because you have fired a coach after 2 years consecutive times, that should be reasoning to keep guys in the front office and on this coaching staff just because of that. Absolutely not. There's no way that you can convince me of that. And like I said, I know where the chat is on this one. I know exactly where y'all are at. And I'm going to carry this into another giant overreaction that hits on the same similar type of points here about Joe Schoen being at fault for the results of the New York Giants. Now, Daryl Slater for NJ.com, he said the Giants are terrible, in parentheses, he had yet again, largely because of Joe Schoen's failures in the first 2 drafts, and this is a fact. Joe Schoen drafted 7 players in the top 115 picks in 2022, and right now you truly have nothing to show for it. Kayvon Thibodeau at number 5, Evan Neal at number 7, Wan'Dale Robinson over George Pickens at 43, Joshua Ezeudu at 67, Cordero Flott at 81, and Daniel Bellinger and Dane Belton in the hundreds. Joe Schoen took 3 players in the top 75 in the 2023 draft. He traded up for 2 of those guys, Deonte Banks and Jalen Hyatt. Deonte Banks was drafted 24th overall. Jalen Hyatt was drafted 73rd overall. And he also drafted John Michael Schmitz with the 57th overall pick. None of these dudes are true contributors to the New York Giants in 2024. My guy, Daryl Slater, went on to explain that you cannot miss on that many premium draft picks and expect to field a competent year or a competent team in year 3. If the Giants lose to the Panthers in Germany, they will now have started 2-8 in back-to-back seasons. And after the moves that Joe Schoen made last year, allowing Saquon Barkley to walk, allowing Xavier McKinney to walk, trading away Leonard Williams, spending draft capital on positions of need rather than drafting BPA, best player available. This is absolutely unacceptable. A homie of mine on Twitter, Dan Cam, shout out to Dan Cam one time, he said, and he said this in the space, he said, Hard Knocks told us everything that we needed to know about Joe Schoen. And I cannot agree with that statement anymore. The fact that he valued Saquon Barkley at $7 million and people younger than him in that room at lower positions in the front office of the New York Giants understood that, you sure? Like, really? You think Saquon Barkley is going to get $7 million on the market? And if that was true, if you thought Saquon Barkley was going to get $7 million on the market, why would you go and sign Devin Singletary for $5.5 million AAV after the fact? Were you lying to yourself? Joe Schoen said this, and shout out to Chris Peace, who's in the chat, that reminded me of this just yesterday. And I heard Sal from He's a Giant double down on it on the space earlier today. Joe Schoen said, be competitive today while still building for tomorrow. It's not a rebuild. Those are the words out of his mouth. And I know I'm going to tap into the chat here, and a lot of people are going to agree with that, going to agree with the statement. The mistake was Joe Schoen committing to trying to compete. It was the mistake back in 2022 when he first got here. It was the mistake after 2022 in signing Daniel Jones to that ridiculous contract that we all know he didn't deserve. And it was the mistake entering 2024 after he allowed some key cornerstone pieces to walk in free agency. I'll dial back here, kind of see where y'all are at, try to highlight some of the key comments y'all are making here. But I know y'all are going to understand the sentiment here. I know you are. Strider says, at this point, take a shot at Evan Neal, but it's stupid they won't try. Yep. Victor said, everywhere quarterback was successful behind our lines. Kind of think what you're saying there, that other quarterbacks would be, and I do agree with that. Kevin says the Giants O-line is a Donald Trump-like wall. Yeah, man, dude, it's like, I don't understand it. I don't, like, what do fans expect from an offensive line? That the quarterback should have time back there like a quarterback that's in college? It's not going to happen. Jaden says it's an overreaction that keeping Schoen and Daboll because you are scared of change is going to delay the rebuild. I think what he's trying to say is he agrees with the statement on the screen. But that part of it, if you're a fan on the opposite end of it, it is an overreaction. RedX3R0 says Schoen first 2 drafts are all bust and trash. Nabers is apparently a diva, according to some fans. Daboll, after starting strong for one half of his first season, has been horrendous. You couldn't have worded that any better, my dog. Black Fox 72 says, what about play calling of running the whole first half? It was trash. That's what it was. But it goes to, it speaks volumes on the quarterback that you have on the roster when you got to run that much. And Malik Nabers came out after the game and said that there was an emphasis on the game plan to run the ball, and that's probably a mistake. My understanding is, if we're in a situation where Daniel Jones can't get us to wins on his arm, if I am the head coach and the offensive coordinator, I'm going to throw the ball as much as I can to expose those flaws. I'm not going to try to hide Daniel Jones so that fans like Brian come back and say, yeah, he's doing his job. I'm not going to do that. Sebastian with the under. Royal Money with the under. Jay Jackson with the under. Gregory with the under. Stan said, Sock Passe Unk with the U in parentheses. That's a bar. Red X said, big U. No Pro Bowlers or all pros. Chris P said, I'm so in agreement that I'm a Subway. Strider said, hey, Authentic, remember what Joe Schoen said on picks 5 and 7? He said, you can't screw up picks 5 and 7. How the fuck is that looking right now? It's looking terrible. Victor said McFadden, average player. Berg said he's taking the under. No depth, can't find talent, free agents aren't producing. How that seat is not red hot, I'll never understand. Mike Jones said, overreaction. DJ is the common denominator. We've had different GMs, coaches, players. It's DJ Slim. I love that reasoning, bro. I love that reasoning. That's why I'm here. You get an overreaction like this, and I understand the sentiment of your statement here, big time. That when you have a quarterback like this, how can we even expect the GM or this roster or this coaching staff to look competent? Say Less NYC said trading up for Hyatt and not playing him is wild. Absolutely. Absolutely. Kevin the PRF said overreaction. Free agency has been the primary culprit. Exhibit A, Daniel Jones, then Barkley, McKinney, and Waller. But aren't these issues that the New York Giants front office and coaching staffs got themselves into? Maybe you're trying to say under. I don't know. The drafts have been terrible. Free agency has been, it's been okay. You found some gems in Bobby Okereke. I'm trying to think of, so you mean free agency like not retaining your homegrown players, or maybe allowing these guys to walk and not re-signing them? Maybe that's what you're saying there. Darren Waller wasn't a free agent acquisition. He was traded for and then retired the following year. I don't know, Kevin. I don't know where you're going with that one. Big Dog said he's taking the under. Brian Perez says, yeah. What are Judge and Garrett doing now? Yeah, I mean, the coach killer got them offed. Joe Judge wasn't a good coach. That doesn't mean Daniel Jones is a good quarterback. That's the kind of thinking that this statement before said, like, oh, just because like those guys aren't good means this guy's good. Nah, the quarterback's not good at all. I'm on the verge of calling him trash now. Say Less said starting 2-8 again and not getting a quarterback in the draft would be malpractice. Absolutely, especially after all those moves. Jaden714 says he's taken the under. Dave Gettleman has done more for this team after his tenure than Joe Schoen has done during. No argument from me. Devin Singletary, Kevin added as one of the free agent moves. Yeah, you had to fill up the hole from Saquon Barkley. Kareem E says it's no reaction. The Giants are terrible largely because they fail to develop the talent they have. I could give you that. Strider says authentic. Sometimes position by value is bullshit. Look at McKinney and Barkley. Yeah, especially if you're committing to a rebuild, I'm the kind of person that's like, go get the best players. Let me think about who we drafted here. Oh, we drafted Tyler Nubin in the second round. Braden Fisk was there. If you were drafting for need, then I could understand why you go with the defensive back. But that's only for a team that's competing now. And to be able to look at your roster in the mirror and not understand they're not ready to compete as the general manager, that's malpractice right there. DeIlla says, and all these people were talking about how physical Banks was coming out of Maryland. I had trouble even finding tape on him making a tackle to say something like that about him. As my dogs, I film for Maryland. It's tough to see Deontay Banks struggling. Mikey Mashima says it's an overreaction. Black Fox says everyone wanted Barkley. I don't agree with you. I can remember that in real time, and no, people were on Joe Schoen's side. And I think that Joe Schoen did a good job of convincing that we didn't need Barkley. And that shit looks crazy now. It looks crazy now. Barkley is going crazy in Philadelphia. And he's playing some really, really good football. Yeah, big dog status. Yeah. Tank said, agree. Y'all be cracking jokes. Mikey said that this draft class is amazing. But this draft class looks good in the first year. I'll give you that. But the statement is more focusing on largely in part to the first two drafts. Is it amazing? Is Andrew Phillips going to turn out to be an amazing player? Is Theo Johnson going to turn out to be an amazing player? Is Tyler Nubin going to be an amazing player? Is Darius Muasau going to be an amazing player? Is Tyrone Tracy going to be an amazing player? Of all those names, Tyrone Tracy seems like the guy that could be a guy. Malik Nabers, yeah. I got faith in true elite faith in about two of those draft picks. But I'm also willing to give them the benefit of the doubt like I did the first two draft classes. Give me 2 years of tape on them, and then I'll figure it out. Leon going with the overreaction. Talking Eco's taking the under. I also think the DJ contract also contributes to their downfall. Should have rebuilt like the Bills. See, the thing is if you had the quarterback with the pieces that are around that quarterback, if you drafted well, I think that you would have the proper roster around a mediocre quarterback like Daniel Jones to blemish some of this, and you would be at least winning some games. Blazin says, make it make sense regarding Evan Neal. Not at left tackle. You can't. Red X3R0 says, I thought Carmen Brasillo was an offensive line guru. Shouldn't he be developing Neal? Good point. Powell says he's taking the under. Bad 2022 draft. I like how Powell caught on to the rules. I ain't even say the rules today, but Powell caught on. I respected you, Powell. Says terrible 2023 draft. So far, so good in 2024. That's how I feel about it as well. Royal Money said Nabers just wants to win. Blazin says the mistake was not giving Barkley the bag when the team recognized him as the leader over Jones, then doubling down on Jones. I cannot disagree with that. Hermit Rob says, how do these people ascend to these positions? It's fucking mind-boggling. It is, man. Like, I got friends on Twitter that have assessed and could look at the salary cap and the roster with a better viewpoint than how Joe Schoen has, which is crazy. Tone Blue says there's clearly no trust in the quarterback. Yup. A lot of use. Mikey doubled down on his overreaction. I bleed with the under. Leon said, it seems you need to look at John Mara. They must be doing something right. I bet Mara believes that Saquon is there by mistake. I'm not too sure what you're insinuating there with about Saquon. Mara did want to keep Saquon around. We saw that on Hard Knocks. I'm not sure if you saw those episodes. He talked about how he wasn't going to be able to sleep at night with Saquon Barkley in Philly. It screamed to me that he's given this regime their opportunity to draft and develop the guys that they want to. I'm not too sure, though, what you mean here. But I also, in the beginning statement that you say here, I'm not going to dismiss that John Mara might have had his hand in the cookie jar when it comes to the Daniel Jones contract. Big Dog Status is trolling y'all a little bit. Shout out, Big Dog. Okay, Brian says, want a functional offense, don't hire Judge and Garrett. So what about Brian Daboll? What about Pat Shurmur? Do you think that Daniel Jones was functional in 2019? You think he was functional when he fumbled the ball 19 times, lost 11 of them, and had 12 interceptions to go along with that? 6 of his fumbles were scooped and scored for a touchdown by the other team. You think that was functional? Do you think that a quarterback throwing for 15 passing touchdowns is functional? Sustainable? There's no way you can think that. What about in 2023 when he went out there after getting paid the big bag and he put up 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, 7 turnovers? You think that was functional? Or is it everything around him? I'm willing to bet you think it's everything around him. But we understand. It's almost, at this point, Brian, as if you're trolling us, bro. Real Cold G says, I wanted Fisk bad next to Dex. Yeah, man. All throughout my Bleacher Report streams leading up to the draft process, I was heavy on Florida State players. Loved Braden Fisk coming out, man. That would have been an amazing pick. But when Joe Schoen gave the insinuations that he was competing, I knew that we were not going to be able to draft him. I knew that because in the second round, we were not going to go trenches on the defensive side of the ball. I knew that. Strider talking about the DBs and our safeties having 0 interceptions. Yeah, it's terrible. Our only interception on the year came from Darius Muasau on a tip pass in week 1. We have not had an interception since. Yeah, it's terrible. Red X3R0 says Thibs looked good in his first year. Banks looked good in the first year. Let's see Nabers in the second year. But people comparing Nabers to Giants OBJ was laughable, considering OBJ was doing crazy stuff. Yeah, I always thought that. We should have learned our lesson when the people were saying that about Jalen Hyatt as well. Like, oh, this guy's going to come in here and be the next Odell Beckham Jr. I always thought wearing number 13 was even kind of interesting. Like, I had high hopes for Jalen Hyatt, but I never thought he was going to be Odell. I thought he could potentially be a wide receiver 1 if they developed his route tree, but right now it's looking terrible for Jalen Hyatt. Neil is a bust, says Brian. Yeah, you preaching to the choir. A fat baby is funky. Yes, it's very clear. And then Big Dog Status said, so is Jones. He's absolutely a bust. I challenge Brian to answer that question. If you think Evan Neal is a bust, do you think that Daniel Jones is a bust? See what you say about that. Miguel Cintron says, Gettleman definitely drafted better than Shane except for the Jones pick. Yep. I think Gettleman would have been smart enough to not pay Daniel Jones too. Tommy says Shane somehow being worse than Gettleman is just like Kamala somehow being worse than Biden. It seems literally impossible, but somehow it's true. I almost wish I didn't highlight that because I don't do the politics shit. I just don't do that at all. Jaden says he's trolling harder than KJ in that space yesterday. They tried to tell me KJ was trolling. He sounded like he was legit being for real. Ain't no telling. Blazing, Brian is welcome here, but he's definitely wearing them goggles, man. Them Duke blue goggles for sure. OG said Daniel Jones is a bust. Brian said Garrett was ass. Garrett was okay, actually. I thought, it wasn't good. It wasn't like great, but I thought he was all right. He was smart enough to know you got to run the ball with Daniel Jones. But I want to know if he thinks Daniel Jones is a bust. Evan Neal has had 2 seasons of playing. Keith Wilson Jr. coming in with the $4.99 super chat. Says, salute, OG. I keep thinking of what you said about other NFL content because it's the same shit every week with this team. I hate Sundays now. Go Canes. Yeah, bro. I'm with you, man. Thank you for being here and supporting our channel. And there's no way that I don't tap into doing more content around the NFL, especially during the offseason. There's no way. But salute to you, man. I'm rooting for the Canes week in and week out. I want to see Cam Ward win the Heisman and be drafted by the New York Giants. That's the plan. Shout out to you, fam. I appreciate that. David says, I believe that Daboll knows Jones is a bust. That's why he wanted Jaden or Drake in Hard Knocks. And in that, I think he's saying press conference, he never talks about Jones in ways like he talked about Josh Allen. He always knew it. Yeah. Go back and look at the last time we played the Philadelphia Eagles last year, too, how he talked about Jalen Hurts, held him to high regard. He's never talked about Daniel Jones like that, rightfully so. Toxic Tom says, authentic. All you need is that 90s Giant starter jacket, man. Yeah, I should get me one of those. I got Carl Banks blessed me with a fire starter, like like a full zip kind of varsity style joint that I still ain't never seen nobody wearing it. It's straight fire. But I do need a full zip. Yeah, you're right. I got a bunch of vintage shit. I'm going to go looking for that. Beard, if you tuning in right now, keep your eyes peeled for that large full zip, the old school, the originals. I was never the half zip starter type of dude. Strider says that Jason Garrett knew that Daniel Jones was a quarterback with limitations. Absolutely. Oh, Brian blaming Daniel Jones' failures on Jason Garrett. All right. I'm done with you, Brian. I'm done with you, Brian. Yeah, now I'm at times, like, I wish I could, like, take a clone, put him up here real quick for a second, and then go join y'all in the chat. Because, man, it's a good talk happening right now in that chat, yo. All right, let's get off into this next Giant overreaction one time. And I knew you guys are going to feel a certain way about that last one, but this one, I don't know. I think this one might be a little bit different. Let's get off into this next Giant overreaction. All right, this one comes from, kind of sounds like a bot account almost, at Kevin139399273. And I kind of worded it a little bit different, but I'll read it exactly as he posted it online. And this was in response to me tweeting out, this is what could happen with Cam Ward throwing to Malik Nabers, a highlight in Cam Ward's game against Duke the other day. Kevin responded with, this putrid franchise isn't getting anywhere near pick 1. Give it up. Giants' pride will get them to 6 wins. Let me know if you think this is an overreaction by putting an O in the chat. If you think the statement on the screen is true and that the Giants aren't playing bad enough or won't play bad enough to get close to a top 10 pick or near pick number 1, then you can put a U in the chat to represent that you are taking the under. And if you want to cop out a little bit and need a little bit more time to see what the New York Giants do over the next 8 games, you can put a P in the chat to represent you are taking the push. Now, Cam Ward just went out here against Brian Perez's alumni, Duke University, and straight dog walked them with a 5-touchdown, 400-yard performance. The Giants have now lost 4 straight games. Carolina is not looking like an automatic W right now. I thought that the Colts might be another game that the Giants could win down the stretch, but Joe Flacco is trying to compete right now and trying to win games. It's no telling if they're going to go back to Anthony Richardson or if the New York Giants can beat that Indianapolis Colts team. There are just 8 games left on the year. The Giants right now currently have the number 7 pick in the 2025 draft after their loss this past week to the Washington Commanders. Every team from picks 1 through 6 right now have the exact same record. That record is 2-7. 2 teams have a worse losing streak than the New York Giants right now, in the Saints, who have lost 7 straight games, and the Raiders, who have lost 5 straight games. The Saints currently have the 3rd overall selection, and the Raiders currently are just 1 pick above the New York Giants. The top 6 picks right now are owned by the Patriots at number 1, the Jags at number 2, the Saints at number 3, the Panthers at 4, the Browns at pick number 5, and the Raiders at pick number 6. I think the Patriots with Drake May at quarterback are going to find a way to possibly win more games than the New York Giants. Their defense has been playing pretty decent, and Drake May gives them an opportunity to win. The Jags are in a situation where their offense is not necessarily the problem, although Trevor Lawrence did throw a bit of an erratic interception this past week to lose the game against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Jags are still competing and putting up points. Their defense is where they have been really falling short. They're allowing teams to score way too many points this year. The Saints are the team that I think we need to worry about. They just fired Dennis Allen this morning. They have had troubles getting the ball in the end zone as well. Injuries have riddled that offensive side of the ball. Chris Olave was just knocked out of that past game with a concussion. They've been dealing with injuries all season. That defense is banged up. And Dennis Allen now, not being the head coach, I don't know where that defense is going to go. So I think that the Saints are absolutely a team that we need to worry about. Spencer Rattler came in relief for Derek Carr a couple of times earlier this year and really didn't play that great of football, not good enough football to make the Saints say we're not going to draft a quarterback. The Panthers, same thing. Bryce Young did get a win this past week after he was named the starter entering week 9, but I don't think the Panthers are looking at their situation as if they don't have to draft a quarterback. The Browns, same thing. They have Deshaun Watson over there, who was out for the year with the Achilles injury, but the dead cap hits on his contract are a little bit too high for them to part ways with him, if you ask me, but they're probably going to likely draft a quarterback. They do have Dorian Thompson-Robinson on the roster right now, who has shown a few signs of life, but a lot of these teams are going to be in that middling range of needing a quarterback. I think the Giants are going to be able to get close, and if they can't get close, I think you have to do everything in your power to trade up if you're not in that top 3 to be able to get one of these quarterbacks. And you have to really gauge the market and figure out if these 2 quarterbacks are actually going to go in the top 3, top 5, top 10, and where you realistically have a chance to draft them. But you cannot leave this draft without a quarterback in the first round. Cam Ward, I think, is my quarterback 1 right now, and I think that's the guy that the Giants should target. And then commit to the rebuild. You know, some of your cornerstone pieces can hang around. Andrew Thomas has a lot of good football left. Dexter Lawrence has a lot of good football left. You pray that you can possibly bring in another weapon to pair with Malik Nabers, and hopefully you can develop some of these guys that are still on the roster like Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt and commit to your plan that you had with those guys. You drafted a wide receiver every year in the first 3 years of your draft. I think Joe Schoen is all money in at this point, and you got to go out there and commit to that. It's clear that the Giants need a new quarterback. Daniel Jones is not the guy that's going to take them to a Super Bowl or even get this team back to competing. So bring in a guy like Cam Ward or bring in a guy like Shedeur Sanders. That's how I see it. Let me see what the chat's talking about, and we'll move on to the next one. And let me scroll back here, and we'll go. We'll start here with Tommy Football. Tommy Football says he's taking the under. Giants always manage to mess up their draft pick. Won't be long until DeVito is in getting wins. Wouldn't surprise me. JJ Stengel says, go through the schedule. Who are we beating? Maybe 1, 2 wins. Yeah, I'm right there with you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys the schedule while we go through some of these so you can do it for yourself. This is the remaining schedule. Just one more game on the top row. So you got the Carolina Panthers on the top row, and then it's all the games on the bottom row. Where is Tommy DeVito going to get a win? Saints, possibly. Colts, possibly. Panthers, possibly. To me, the Giants are going to sit right exactly where I had them at the beginning of the year. Before free agency, it was 4 wins, and after the draft, it was 6 wins. I don't see any way they get more wins than that. I'm going to go through some of the comments, but I'm going to keep the schedule up here for y'all. Big Brother Thunder says, can you explain how the Giants had a harder strength of schedule than all the teams ahead of us with the same record, but we're at the bottom of the draft order? Yeah, that is pretty interesting. I think, right now with the draft order, the way that they're calculating it is conference wins, because divisional wins will only matter getting into the playoffs. The Giants are the only team right now in the NFL that is 0-4 in their respective division. But I'm sure they're looking at conference wins for the rest of these teams, and that's where things get a little dicey. But the final record at the end of the year is going to be likely very different. You won't have 7 teams sitting at 2-7. So it'll break up a little bit there. But I do think that that's a good question. I think that's why a lot of people think that, like the statement that was on the screen, that the Giants aren't going to be able to get into the top 3 or the top 5 or anywhere near that number 1 pick to try to get the quarterback that they want. I don't even know which player at this point in time is being looked at as the number 1 prospect, but I'm going to get some early, chances to be able to start the research and see what players are going to be expected to go in the top 10, and that's how we'll try to figure out where we get our quarterback. Powell says, I'm no DJ supporter, but if he was paid $5 million a year, then we will not be talking about him being this bad. But because he is being paid $40 million a year, then his deficiencies will be magnified. I do agree with you on that point. But the thing is that you shouldn't be middling and paying a quarterback like that unless you look at him as the bridge. Daniel Jones was not drafted to be the bridge or a stopgap quarterback. He was drafted to be the franchise quarterback. And once they declined a 5th-year option, it was time to move on. I know he won a couple of games and whatnot, and a lot of people credited him for a lot of those game-winning drives and game-winning comebacks, which we all know that was Saquon Barkley, over 160 yards during those 5 game-winning drives and 3 total touchdowns. Daniel Jones, during the 5 game-winning drives, was 10 of 12. He didn't have 1 throw. These are accurate statistics. Daniel Jones, during those 5 game-winning drives in 2022, did not have 1 throw that was past the sticks. He had all of his 10 completions for a combined 25 air yards. The longest throw during his game-winning drives, the longest throw traveled 6 air yards. That's an offense with training wheels on it. And for me, I don't want a kid running this offense on a tricycle. I want a real deal offense, and Daniel Jones does not present that. Jaden says, the Browns are going to win some games, and so are the Jags. I'm right there with you on that. Jameis Winston at quarterback now, he's going to win the Browns some games. You saw them go out there and beat the Ravens. They were unsuccessful this past week getting the W. The Jacksonville Jaguars have a potent enough offense that they're going to win some games. Are the matchups presented going to allow them to win less games than us? I'm not 100% sure. Let me see. Talking Eco says, let's hope Young and Winston can continue to win games, or Shane will need to call New England again. And this time they won't need a quarterback, which will be good. So we do have some outs and some options there to be able to try to trade up. Kurt Berry says, it matters the way that you lose there. Nothing from this coaching staff and GM for me to hold on to at this point. I'm totally with you. Anybody that feels like Kurt feels right now, I do not fault you. This coaching staff has not proven that there's any reason why they should not be fired. And front office, same thing goes for the general manager. Lou Mateo says, would you trade for Derek Carr? I absolutely would not. Toxic Tom says, if you think a certain quarterback is your guy, then pay to go get him. Landing that right quarterback has that massive of an impact. Yes, we saw that with C.J. Stroud. We've seen that with Jaden Daniels in Washington. We saw it firsthand this past week. Sarah, as a Minnesota Vikings fan, even said no to Derek Carr. Commander Football said, you Giant fans can, I don't even know what he's trying to say there. You Giants fans can't, let me see if I can't figure this out, have a good base. The only thing missing is a quarterback, but they're hard to find. I guess he's trying to say like the New York Giants have a good base of a roster here and that the only thing missing is a quarterback, but they're hard to find. I disagree with you on this. The Giants are not a quarterback away. Our secondary is one of the worst in the NFL. We have no true top-tier elite talent in that secondary at all. We need more depth across the board. Defensive line needs more depth. Not drafting one player in the trenches this past draft is coming back to bite us. The offensive line has some decent pieces for the now on it, but a lot of those guys are on short-term contracts. Jermaine Illuminor is on a 2-year deal. Greg Van Roten is on a 1-year deal. Aaron Stinney, the guy who was brought in as a depth guard piece, is on a 1-year deal. John Runyon Jr. is on a 3-year deal. So by the time this team is ready to compete, you're going to have to re-up on some of these contracts or figure out players to replace them with. And here's the crazy part. When you look at some of these offensive linemen that have left the New York Giants, Ben Bredesen, I forget where he's at. He's having hella success. I think it's over there in Tampa Bay. John Feliciano had great success over there with the San Francisco 49ers. Kevin Zeitler had success on both teams. I don't understand why the New York Giants are struggling to develop their offensive line talent, but I do. It starts with the quarterback position, which a quarterback will help this team get into the right direction, but by no means, Commander Football, are the Giants a quarterback away, in my opinion. Kevin the PRF says that Shadur Sanders might be a reach. I don't disagree with you that much right there. Depends. Like, I would prefer to get a guy like Shadur Sanders later in the first round rather than trying to spend a top 10 pick on him, in the first round. So I do believe you on that. Blazing Brazen says that, Fennec, do you have numbers on how one-year college quarterbacks do in the NFL? Some of them have not done well. I mean, Anthony Richardson is a guy you can think of from the recent past that didn't have enough snaps. Trey Lance is another guy that only played like 14 college games or something like that, and he looked terrible in the NFL. That's something I might want to look into. I like that. Some I could definitely do some research on for sure. Strider says, Authentic, I was impressed with the touchdown pass when Cam Ward spun away from pressure, rolled to his right, got his feet set, and threw a touchdown pass. It was excellent. He turned his back to the defensive line to make that play. It was amazing. And the ball did come up a little bit short. It was tipped just a little bit, but the throw had enough velocity on it. It's a play you don't see many quarterbacks on any level make. Cam Ward is next level. I'm a big fan. Unofficially Retired says, I think if we get a top 3 pick, we should do what Houston did. Get your quarterback and then trade up again. Use future draft capital to get another impact player. I would be for that as well. Let me see. Platinum Power says it's an overreaction. This is not an easy schedule. Plus, if we sell at the deadline, maybe or make a change at quarterback, I don't see us winning much. I'm definitely with you. The statement that was on the screen about the Giants are going to do this and, Authentic, stop it. Yeah, you're definitely right about that. I don't think it's going to be as easy as people think to win some games and do what the Giants have done in the past. Sarah said the same points I said. Look at Trey Lance and Anthony Richardson. Yup. Jaden said we have to pray Carolina beats us. Pal said it's an overreaction, but only if we are sellers at the deadline, because that Eagles last game, if they are already in the playoffs, won't play most of the starters, and we might get a win there. You hope that happens, but this is how I look at it. The Washington Commanders' schedule down the stretch here, outside of their divisional games, is a fourth-place schedule. It's super easy. I expect the Commanders to win about 11 games. So unless the Eagles are in a situation where they cannot clinch first place in the NFC East down the stretch there at that last Week 18 game, I think the Eagles are actually going to be trying to fight their butts off to try to get a higher seed and win the division to get a home game in Philly for the playoffs. We'll see. A lot of football left to be played. We're right at the midpoint of the season. 8 more weeks to go. Let me see. Jaden says that Carolina got Dennis Allen fired and they're about to get Daboll fired. That's a really good statement because that could definitely happen, and that'll be a long flight back from Germany. Kevin says you don't need to worry about the Jags or Pats. They're not taking a quarterback. But the reason why you need to worry about them is because if they get a higher draft pick than you, then they will have the luxury of trying to trade out of that draft spot with another team that needs a quarterback. So you absolutely have to worry about them. That's a false statement. DeIlla says Cedric Tillman looking like the real deal. Yes, he is now. I love to see that from him. Fellow teammate of Jalen Hyatt. Jaden doubled down talking about Will Hernandez. Kareem Yee brought up Matt Pert, all offensive linemen that are seeing success outside of New York. David G said, what up, Authentic? Daboll is losing this locker room fast. I don't know if he's losing the locker room just yet. I know when it comes to Malik Nabers, there's something going on there for sure. I think that losing the locker room is a statement that is kind of a cliche in the league just a little bit, just like culture. He's losing games. When you're losing games, all of those statements become true. Lou Mateo said Sam Darnold with his time with the Jets. Look at him now. Yep, they put him around some true quarterback gurus in Kyle Shanahan and Kevin O'Connell, and he has looked like a totally different quarterback. Journey says, yeah, follow the Texans' path and get Will Johnson or Will Campbell with the trade up. Great idea. I forget who it was that brought it up first. Both of y'all are correct. Great idea. Nick DeWick is in the building. Nick DeWick says if Joe Schoen doesn't strike out on Evan Neal, Saquon Barkley is a giant. We don't pay Illuminor. That's a good point you're making there, but also paying Illuminor was not the reason why they had to part ways with Saquon Barkley. They could have found ways to pay Saquon Barkley and upgrade the offensive line. There's no excuse there. You see that the dead cap hit for Devin Singletary this year is the exact same as it is for Saquon Barkley. And sometimes you got to put some money in some void years in the future like the Philadelphia Eagles did after paying not only Jalen Hurts, not only A.J. Brown, but they also paid Devonta Smith. And then they brought in Saquon Barkley, no problem. Toxic Tom says, Hypothetically, let's say you miss out on the top quarterback prospects. Does that mean DJ is still the starter? It could be. And I absolutely hope that that's not the case. I would go in, get a stopgap bridge quarterback for a year, whether it be Russell Wilson if he leaves Pittsburgh, or even Justin Fields, or anybody that could come in here and just be serviceable. The out on the Daniel Jones contract is this year. Handle business and take it. 13th Giant. I love this right here. 13th Giant says they parted ways with Barkley on principle. It was dumb as hell. I'm right there with you. It was something in the philosophy of paying running backs that Joe Schoen did not like. He went and he said, even to one of the best running backs when it comes to playing at an older age in Frank Gore, he told him that at the age of 27, running backs tend to fall off a cliff. That's what the data says. And then he said, what's my man? Frank Gore responded back to him. He said, but this guy's talented. And just minimal words. That's all he said. And Joe Schoen really had no answer for that. And then he went out there and he signed a 27-year-old running back in Devin Singletary and gave him about half the money. Never liked it. Never liked the move. Shout out to Chef Oz in the building. Chef Oz says, what up, my dude? He says, this is hands down the best content channel. Bro, I appreciate that. Like, that means the world to me. I just come up here and try to talk ball as honest as I can, and I enjoy it. That's why we've been up here already for 2.5 hours. Chris P says, the thought of Daniel Jones being here for year 7 just turned my stomach. Yeah, me too. Me too, bro. And Chef Oz says, glad to see the growth, man. Thank you. This is a good point from Deilla. Deilla says, bringing on Drew Lock for $5 million, 1-year deal too, didn't do us any favors in re-signing some of our former players. Should have just gone cheaper, talking about the backup quarterback position. Absolutely. Jaden714 said, Joe Schoen doesn't know anything about football, just the cap. He's the only motherfucker in the league who let good players go for free. It's common sense. You're not lying. Sebastian said that Joe Schoen is a straight up idiot. I'm tired of that fraud being our GM. And I'm starting to get there, y'all. I'm there. I just don't want to make too egregious of a statement. But Sebastian, you dropping bars here right now. It's a great point. D Nice said, if Jones is back next year, just fire everyone. Notorious HAN says, I like Tracy Jr. Barkley is gone. We need to get over it. We don't need to get over it. Notorious, I think you can get over it. But I think for the people that were clamoring for Saquon Barkley to stay on this roster, especially from a philosophy standpoint when it comes to Joe Schoen trying to build a team that is competing right now, it made zero sense. And then we have to sit up here and watch Saquon Barkley run all over the whole goddamn division right over there down the street in Philadelphia. I encourage people to never tell nobody how to fan. But at the end of the day, I'm never going to get over the Saquon Barkley situation. And I'm going to continue to talk about it week in and week out and monitor it. You know, I had a Giants fan that came into the comment section the other day and went back to the first week when I showed all of Saquon Barkley's carries in succession. And he said, man, can you please put together more of these videos? Because I want to see the impact of what it looks like when Saquon Barkley is in a different organization week to week. And I have kind of failed him a little bit because I haven't gone back to do that, and I owe him one. I'm going to go in and I'm going to definitely do that for this last game here against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Let me see. Unofficially Retired Podcast says, agreed, bro. I'm definitely out on Joe, but I don't want to snap yet. That's where I'm at with it. I'm definitely right there with it. Toxic Tom said, it's not that Barkley left, but how and why he left is what makes it awful. It was handled poorly by the Giants front office. 100%. Big Dog said, y'all don't realize we could have kept McKinney and Barkley and had a stopgap quarterback had they let Jones walk. That hurt, bro. The Illa said, but Authentic would have a shot at QB like Cam Ward if Saquon was here. I don't think we would. I don't think Saquon Barkley really gets this team to winning more games because they would be set up with the same situation. But it is a hypothetical one. Tyrone Tracy goes out there and he's an effective runner. He gets yards. He doesn't have the big explosive plays. But Barkley being on this team might have just been a totally different approach. Like the last person said, I just don't like the way it was handled. It was bad business. You know, I talked about this in the spaces with the homies the other day, right? Like Saquon Barkley and what he did for the New York Giants organization for 5 seasons, right? Yeah, they didn't win a lot of games. But he was the face of that, right? He was the one that was the captain, the leader, the explosive playmaker that the team looked towards when they needed those big plays. And he did that for 5 years on a terrible team. The negotiation period should have been simple. They should have taken care of Saquon off the strength. And honestly, I'm surprised that John Mara, I know how he felt about it, but I'm surprised that he didn't just step in and say, no, we're signing that player. He is owed that by this franchise. It's a running back contract. We're not talking about a quarterback where it's going to cost you $40+ million. We're not talking about an edge rusher where it's going to cost you $28 million or more. We're talking about a running back contract that would have cost you somewhere around 3 to 5% of the salary cap of your team to keep one of the best playmakers on that squad and pair him with a Malik Nabers when you already signed the quarterback to a terrible contract. Joe Mar's in the building. Joe Mar said, clean house and hire a third-party company to help with the hiring process. I love that idea. Joe Schoen is a little better than Dave Gettleman, but both are cheeks. He can't draft and let players walk with no compensation. That's been the reoccurring theme. Chris P said, which was more egregious, letting Saquon walk or letting McKinney walk? I'm going to say McKinney. And they just didn't even address it. But McKinney was commanding top dollar. Nah, let me take that back. I'm going Saquon Barkley. It was just a running back contract. It wouldn't have cost much money. Joe Mar said both. Six Don't Miss. Shout out Six Don't Miss. Says, I don't understand why the NFL doesn't look into sign and trades like the NBA. I'd rather get something in return than just letting someone go for free. To be honest, I wanted Adam Peters. Anyways, W stream. Thank you, Six Don't Miss. I ain't seen you in here. Appreciate you rocking out with us today. And you're right about that. I remember posting some pictures of Adam Peters with no statement on my Twitter in the first season of Joe Schoen. Like, whoa. After that first draft was looking as terrible as it was, I'm one of those people too, quietly, under wraps, that absolutely would have enjoyed having Adam Peters over here as the general manager. RedX3R0 says, I still believe we hired Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll while interviewing other GMs and head coaches. That's why Flores sued and ESPN reported it on their website weeks before it was official. I agree with you on that. And it would have been a much better situation had we have had Brian Flores right now. Brian Flores, yeah, he's tearing it up in Minnesota. Daniel Jones been in the league for 6 years, not one commercial. Shit, even Hyatt got one. Big Dog Status making a good point there. Shout out Lucas Aiken one time in a building. That's my dog from across the pond. He said, so Hard Knocks has actually emphasized every mistake the front office has made. Be interesting to see if another team does it next season. I really hope they do, and I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss not being on Hard Knocks in the beginning of the 2025 season. I loved getting that insight on our team, and seeing those mistakes in real time was laughable, but also very entertaining. Jaden says Joe Schoen didn't even have Burns on his radar and randomly allowed Dan Morgan to convince him to trade for him like it was Madden. He's not serious, bro. I'm with you on that. Mikey says that Saquon was hurt the next 3 years after his rookie year. Okay. I've seen players get injured and come back from injuries. Saquon proved that in 2022 when he rushed for over 1,000 yards in that year, and he was 4th in the NFL in rushing. The entire offense moved in 2022 because of Saquon Barkley. That was enough for them to be able to make the negotiation extremely easy and get the deal done. They should have paid Saquon what he wanted. It's that simple. DeIlla says that it was more egregious to not sign McKinney because he's 24 with a ton of football ahead of him and he's Pro Bowl talent. It's a great point. Y'all are all making some really, really great points. Let me see. One jumped on me there. Leon says Barkley was and is a dog. He had to leave. Shane should have never let him walk, trade him to an AFC team. That would have been smart. Talking Eco says that Brian Flores is a leader of men. It looks like it. Talking Nico says, I don't care if Flores was hard on Tua. You need to hold quarterbacks accountable. Love that. Big Dog Status said, come on, bro. Even DeVito got the spaghetti sauce sponsor. What are we doing here? And this is going to be a good one here. Chris Kalev came in with the super chat. Shout out Chris Kalev for that $2 super chat. He says, why hasn't Isaiah Simmons received enough snaps? And Mark, how you say that last name? Malik says, because Simmons sucks. Simmons is an interesting player, man. He's a, what do they call you? A person who has, what's the saying about a master of none? I forget the beginning of the statement, but he's a master of none. He's a good player and he can do things, right? But he doesn't do one thing particularly well. They brought him in on a couple of third down packages, having him trying to rush the quarterback and be a guy who can maybe cover running backs and tight ends. Even when he was with Arizona, they couldn't figure it out. Wink couldn't figure it out. And here we are with Shane Bowen. He can't figure it out. I don't have an answer for it, to be honest. But shout out to Chris, man. I appreciate you supporting the channel, my dog. Robert Beckford. Shout out Robert Beckford one time. Let me go over here real quick and get this off. Robert Beckford says, let me see if I can scroll back to it. He says, it's one thing for me to get fooled by Jones. I'm just a fan and a layperson, but guys who are getting paid big money to do this, getting fooled by one season, that should never happen. And I love this statement. It's very true. Like, these guys are supposed to be the best of the best at their job at the highest level of this profession. And they're making these kind of mistakes. I don't get it. It don't make no sense. It really makes no sense. And I'm not a general manager. I'm just a fan like you. I focus in on this game a lot, and I try to be as knowledgeable as I can, but at the end of the day, I don't have the access that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll have. That they couldn't see it is crazy. Sarah says the Vikings defense was soft until Flores took over. Yeah, that's facts. That y'all Vikings defense in 2022 got Daniel Jones paid. Let me see. I'm going to just scroll down and see if there's anything else here. David says that fans need to boycott all Giants games and make the bottom line suffer. Imagine if they came up with a plan to boycott the games and be able to have it where when teams play against the Giants at MetLife, it was nothing but the away team fans. John Mara would be losing his mind, wouldn't he? He'd be losing his mind. I do think that that's something to think about, to be honest. Like, the Giants team has been so bad that nobody's going to want to go see these games. And shout out to Lou Mateo, a jack of all trades but a master of none. That's exactly what Isaiah Simmons is. Billy O'Neill says, do you think Tyrod Taylor would start this week if he was on? Absolutely. If Tyrod was on our team right now, I think that they would have already benched Daniel Jones, because we know at the floor of the situation, Tyrod Taylor is as good as Daniel Jones. But if you really look at it and you really look at the tape and you look at the numbers behind the tape that support it, you know Tyrod Taylor is a better quarterback than Daniel Jones is. Yeah, Kevin, we talked about that with the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott being out multiple weeks. We talked about that. Yep, I did see that. And let me get one more before we go off into this last overreaction here. Mark, I don't know why that last name gives me trouble. Mark Matulik, maybe it's Matulik, double M in the building, Eminem. He says, Taylor wasn't that great, but at least he could throw to Hyatt. DJ doesn't even have the arm to throw to Hyatt. Yeah, that's the problem. That's the big problem. Like, Tyrod Taylor's just a serviceable quarterback. Shout out Elegante in the building one time. Elegante says, bro, what is this process that I hear Shane has? How great is this quote-unquote process, not knowing the quarterback market, running back market, and all the egregious mistakes? Yeah, that whole process thing is just to buffer more time. That's what I think. Chaz G said Geno Smith is better than Daniel Jones too, by far. By far. That's not even, to me, that's not even a comparison. And Mark says it's pronounced Madalik. Madalik. I think that's how the M-A-H would be. Mark Madalik. Yeah. All right, so I had it. I kind of had it. Matulik? Do I got to over enunciate that part? Nah, shout out to Mark one time in the building, though. Red X3R0 says, if we all collectively as fans stop going to the games, everyone is getting fired and DJ would be gone in an instant. I believe being embarrassed is Mayor's worst nightmare. You spot on with that. Spot on with that. And Giants fans need to consider that at this point in time in the career of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll right now. We got to consider that. Shout out Big Mike. He says, I don't think it's DJ's arm. It's his accuracy. He overthrew wide receivers as well. His accuracy is a thing, and the timing as well. Being able to get rid of that ball with anticipation. Man, go back and look at the game where Drew Lock came in the fourth quarter and look at the overthrow to Jalen Hyatt where it just went off his fingertips, and look at the anticipation on that throw. When he throws that ball, Jalen Hyatt is stacked by the DB by 2 yards, but by the time that ball lands, Jalen Hyatt has about a yard on that DB. Unfortunately, he couldn't catch it. And then 13th Giant. I like 13th Giant. He's a very, even keeled kind of fan. He says, DJ is to blame for drops too, but he has no touch. Now, you're right about him having no touch. And I thought the drop that Theo Johnson had up the middle of the field on that little glance route, I thought that was on Daniel Jones. I thought the ball was a little bit too far away from his body, and he had the separation necessary. And those are the differences in the NFL with elite quarterback play. I think it's a bit of both. The wide receivers are dropping passes. There's no doubt about it. And that has been something that I'm sure Brian Daboll and the coaching staff have been trying to correct. Darius Slayton being the guy who's been leading that department of the drops. But Malik Nabers has his fair share of drops when Daniel Jones hits him on a beautiful over-the-shoulder deep ball, and he dropped it against the Philadelphia Eagles. And we've seen that throughout the year, some pivotal drops in key situations. But having no touch does have something to do with it. I'm glad you brought that up. Sarah says that Kirk has way better numbers than Jones, and even we chose to walk away from him. Paying top money to mediocre quarterbacks handicaps your franchise. I've used your Minnesota Vikings as the example of how you do it. They won 11 games that year, and they still were like, you know what? We're not going to pay Kirk Cousins a big contract to come back on a team that we know needs more pieces and going to rebuild. They brought in the bridge quarterback, and they still are able to compete. They got players on that roster. That's the way you do it. Chris P. says, my wife, a Washington fan, commented this past game, why aren't the Giants fans cheering? Why aren't they getting loud on 3rd and 18? I said, because the Giants sucked the fun out of football. Shout out to V. Definitely, it's been an issue, man. They have. And it's, and that's not just Brian Daboll, Joe Schoen, Daniel Jones even, but Daniel Jones has a lot to do with that. Like, I'm telling you, when Tyrod Taylor came in at the quarterback position, I was just like a fan again. And that's just sad. Red X said, I blame Sarah and the Vikings for cursing us with Daniel Jones for at least 2 more years. If that happens, I'm with you. We're going to blame you, Sarah. We're definitely going to blame you. And we're definitely blaming your Vikings. And as Sarah said, LOL, accept my sincerest apologies. Y'all clowning. That's definitely some good points y'all are making, though, in the chat here. Now, let's go to this last one, which to me, I wanted to save this for the end of the show, and I will get y'all out of here in 3 hours of the Giant overreaction. Salute to all of y'all. It seems like the numbers have been up the entire show, so I bet most of y'all have been here since the beginning of the stream. I definitely respect and appreciate that in a major way. Let's go to this last Giant overreaction. Excuse me. All right. I got to get that one more time. All right. Let's get into it. It's been a long stream, y'all. So, this one here says, with Daniel Jones at quarterback, Malik Nabers was a wasted draft pick. Now, this one comes from amgood29 on Twitter. And Malik Nabers had some choice words in his press conference yesterday. And some thought at the beginning of it that it was a shot at Daniel Jones. We were discussing this in the spaces. And at first I was kind of going against the grain saying, it's not that big of a deal that Malik Nabers said the comments that he said. And then I dug into it a little bit more. Shout out to OG Steve and D-Kit for really bringing the information to us all during that stream, and at Base718 on Twitter. Malik said, "It feels better when you come from the mud and you start winning successfully. You've just got to build. You've got to build up. You've got to put the right people in place to be successful. You've got to get the right keys. You've got to get the right guys on the team to win. Obviously, the Commanders have done that. They've got the right guys that they want to be on the team, and they're winning." When Nabers was asked about the early rushing success, if that gave the New York Giants offense a lift, this is where he took a pretty big shot at his head coach. Nabers said, "I don't call the plays, so I don't know. When you run the clock out in the first half, you're scratching in the second half to try to score points, as many as possible. As an offense, you've got to be versatile. You've got to be able to run. You've got to be able to pass. You can't pick between half and half what you want to do. But like I said, I am not the play caller." Malik Nabers finished the day with 9 receptions for 59 yards on 11 targets. Nabers had 0 targets in the first half. He ended up having 42% of the target share of all the pass catchers for the New York Giants. The Giants passed the ball just 6 times in the first half, where Daniel Jones was 4 of 6 for 0 yards and 1 touchdown. It has been almost 25 years since we've seen a quarterback ever do that in the NFL. It's very clear that Malik Nabers misses Daniel Jones, apologize for that, y'all. It is very clear that Malik Nabers misses Jaden Daniels. We saw somewhere near the third quarter where there was a TV timeout, and he's over on the sidelines chopping it up with Jaden Daniels. They're having a laugh. We saw on the play where Malik Nabers caught the ball and tried to reverse his field and lost hella yards. Jaden Daniels on the sidelines laughing and smiling at him, making eye contact. We saw on the pregame warm-ups, they're hugging, dapping each other up. The smile like when you see a good old friend you haven't seen in a long time. And one of my homies, Yankee Mandela, on Twitter said, "We all said this in the offseason. And we did, y'all, that when Nabers starts to act like this, that fans better not start to turn on him. None of these comments that he made should not be or should be unexpected. Every fan who's a realist predicted this." And he's spot on. Before we even drafted Malik Nabers, Brian Daboll asked Malik Nabers in the meeting that they had together with him, "How do you handle not being involved in the game plan early?" And Malik Nabers said, "Not well." And I thought that this was a moment to maybe check the wide receiver that you were going to end up drafting with the 6th overall selection as the head coach, or the future head coach, as Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll almost sympathized with him and said, we want that passion, but also, we want a guy that's going to be able to go up there in front of the media and say all the right stuff. Dan Duggan came out and he said this on Twitter: "Malik Nabers has 30 catches for 320 yards and 3 touchdowns in the 3 games before suffering a concussion in week 4. He has 20 receptions for 171 yards and no touchdowns in 3 games since returning after a 2-game absence. On the year, Malik Nabers has 55 receptions, which is 3rd in the NFL. He's got 557 yards, which is 15th in the NFL, 3 touchdowns, which is 26th in the NFL, and he's averaging 10.1 yards per reception, which is similar to a tight end." Mike Lombardi was on with the Pat McAfee show just recently, and he said, "Bill Walsh used to say, the last position you fix on your team is the wide receiver." The game has changed a little bit, but I do agree with Mike Lombardi on this, that maybe drafting Malik Nabers was a mistake of the pick, but I don't think that the statement here is egregious enough to say it was a wasted pick. Because if the New York Giants can go out there and get their quarterback, well, then you do have a potential wide receiver 1. But if they do go on and they can't get back to competing within the next let's say 3 years to 4 years when the Malik Nabers rookie contract is up, then I think you will have a wasted pick on your hands. We shall see. But I do think that this is something that Brian Daboll has to immediately take care of. And I want to see guys like Dan Duggan, guys like Pat Leonard apply the pressure and ask more questions. I want to see how Brian Daboll feels about this statement from his wide receiver one that he just drafted with the 6th overall selection to save his potential franchise quarterback in Daniel Jones. Let me see what y'all saying about this one. The first thing that just popped up when I come to look at the comments is, how many careers is Daniel Jones going to ruin? RedX3R0 said, Nabers said when he was going to change his ways, they drafted him knowing how he feels about the team and the quarterback. Yeah, he definitely talked about the Giants are going to have to get a quarterback to get me the ball. He didn't really take that main shot at Daniel Jones, but everybody, with the brain knew exactly what he was saying. Logic's Finest says, how many more excuses will be made for Daniel Jones? How many mental gymnastics to have blind hope in Daniel Jones? Daniel Jones is stealing money. Kevin the PRF says, I'm 100% with Lombardi. As good as Nabers is, the position of wide receiver is the most overrated position in sports. I agree with you there. David Paradine says, if they let McKinney and Barkley leave, Nabers is as good as gone after his rookie contract, if not sooner. 40 Lux said, we want Cam Ward. Let me scroll back here. Big Dog Status says he agrees with the statement on the screen. Let me see who else we got here. I Bleed NY Blue 23 says, great show, great content. Thank you for pulling up, bro, and rocking out with us. Big shout out to I Bleed NY Blue 23. Hyphen Wade agrees with the statement on the screen, says the target shares are extremely oversaturated and he's utilizing him like a security blanket. That takes a toll on you physically. Absolutely true. Salute to Sarah for rocking out with the show. Chaz G says, I wanted Penix. Chaz G, I wanted Penix. I would have drafted Penix at 6. I remember when I first said it on Bleacher Report, and Bleacher Report clipped up the clip and put it in the community for tens of thousands of people to see. And the general consensus around that take was, this dude up here does not know football. As time has gone on, a lot of those people have been converted into supporters of Authentic and Authentic in the Beard. So salute to them for at least being able to recognize their wrongs in the process. Real Cole G says Malik wasn't drafted for Jones. He was drafted for the future. All right, if you think that. I completely disagree with that. Daniel Jones was not the future. That's the crazy part about it. They even had to convince themselves on Hard Knocks that, the original plan was to put some weapons around him and build this offensive line. I'm not going to say it's a wasted pick, but Malik Nabers was at Joe Schoen literally said it. We're going to get another weapon for Daniel Jones. He literally said it. Can't agree with that one, Cole G. DeIlla says he's not a wasted draft pick. He's a part of this team's future. BPA. I think ultimately he's a part of the future. I don't think that he's a wasted draft pick either, which is why for me, I got to take the push. But I do think that the reason why they drafted a wide receiver was to try to salvage Daniel Jones. RedX3R0 says he agrees with the statement on the screen. Always start from the inside. Quarterback, then O-line, then tight end, then running back, and finally wide receiver on offense. 13th Giant says it's an overreaction. We have 4 more years of his rookie deal, including the 5th-year option. True. Kevin the PRF says he's taking the push. Depends on who the next guy is. I'm right in that ballpark, Kevin. Let me see. Connor Burke is in the building, says, no way is he a wasted draft pick. He will still be here next year and the following years for the next quarterback. Yep, I can agree with that. Nick DeWick says it's an overreaction. Elegante says he agrees with the statement on the screen. Nabers is the new Barkley. Great players. Nothing to show for it. And that's how we will look at it. It's why I have to take the push. It's why I won't go and say it's an overreaction, because we could be looking back at this statement in about 5 years being like, that was absolutely correct. Big Dog said, shots at the coach and the quarterback. He knows his worth. Nabers is not having it. That's a good point. Red X said, so many fans online are tired of Nabers already. I've seen that too. He says, we are really going to ruin him out of town or run him out of town, and he'll be more happy with Jaden Daniels. If we have to deal with something like that after seeing Saquon Barkley go to Philly, if in a couple of years we had to deal with Jaden Daniels welcoming Malik Nabers, I'd lose it. Jaden says he agrees with the statement on the screen. Teams have a quarterback in place before drafting a wide receiver for a reason. Imagine we had Michael Penix, then drafted McMillan this year. Whew. And if y'all don't know who he's talking about Tedoroa McMillan from Arizona. That boy is a dog. He says now we just have an unhappy Malik Nabers. 9 games in, Jaden. It's crazy. Kareem Yee says it's the same as saying he didn't have any wide receivers, especially since DJ never gave R a chance to win plays. I'm not sure what you're saying there. It's the same as saying we didn't have any wide receivers, especially since DJ never gave R. I'm not sure. Maybe Kareem Yee will clean it up here in a second. Jay Jackson says he's taking an overreaction. Talent and heart like Nabers is what's missing on this team. I agree, but not at the most important position. But I like your statement here. Logic's Finest says Daniel Jones is not the answer. How many years before people wake up and accept that Daniel Jones is a below-average game manager at best? For some people, I think it's going to take for him to just be gone. Like, I see some people now that were like over the top about Daniel Jones the last couple of years and going into this season saying that Daniel Jones was going to have his best year. Now I see them, 1, pointing all the blame at Brian Daboll, and 2, saying, please trade him so that he can go to a team and we'll find out what he really is. We know who Daniel Jones is. Lou Mateo says, Nabers said, I got the wrong DJ. I wanted JD. Laughing my ass off. Got the wrong Daniel. That's big facts right there. That's a good statement. I like that. The Illa says, like I said earlier, this Washington secondary held Caleb Williams to 38 yards in the first half last week. Kept DJ Moore, Romo Dunze, Keenan Allen, and Cole Kmet in check, which is surprising. I think the offense has a lot to do with it, but Dan Quinn as a defensive mind has worked wonders over there. Love the revamping of their linebacker core and what they did up front. Dorrance Armstrong, low-key, was a sneaky signing in the offseason. I love that. And we're kind of right back to where we started here. Let me see what else we got. Kevin the PRF said, I'm 100% with Lombardi. Oh, yeah, we saw this one. Yup. Chat must have just jumped on me. Big Dog Status says they tried to get Jones off life support with the Nabers pick. I agree. Will Hooper's in the building. Shout out to Ill Will. He said, Joe said, let's get Jones a weapon. Literally what he said. Yeah, literally. So to say that he didn't get the weapon for Jones, I don't understand that. Maybe that person just didn't see that particular episode of Hard Knocks. David said he's taking the under. Daniel Jones will get him killed by throwing him into contact. He will get an injury and not be the same. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Let me see what Red X said that somebody was 100% agreeing with there. It might have been one of the ones I brought up. Red X said the Giants don't seem to want dogs that call out others. This is what I was talking about here. Nabers isn't going to be here for long if he's not the same choir boy as Slayton. That's a great point. Like, I'm sick of that. Like, we don't need those good guys no more. Like, look, I don't care what players say in the media. That's why the Shadur Sanders comments about his offensive line don't bother me. Go out there and ball out. That's what's most important to me. K-Form the Great says it's an overreaction. Let me see what else we got here. Yeah, Logic Fine is doubling down on the earlier statement. Shout out to Big Mike one time in the building with the $4.99 super chat. He says it's an overreaction, but like Brian Burns, it's going to take time to see what the GM does at the draft if they get the quarterback. Yeah, a lot of that matters. If Malik Nabers goes through the Odell Beckham treatment as far as how his career goes for the next 4 years, we're going to look back at this the same exact way. Love God says, look how Bo Nix is doing in Denver, which is a mixed bag, right? Like, Bo Nix's play thus far this season has been a very mixed bag. Like, Denver came into that game. They were sitting at 5-3, I believe it was, coming into that game against the Ravens. That's a miracle that he's already won that many games, considering the way that he started off. And Bo Nix, I think from a talent perspective, he doesn't have that high-end talent like the guys, who were drafted ahead of him, like Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and even a J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix. He never had that kind of arm talent. But I think he's a guy that can see some success in this league. And I think that the Denver Broncos are doing it the right way. They are a surprise team for me that they are competing this year. I do want to go back and look at the Ravens game. I didn't get a chance to watch that whole game, but I do want to see that. And Bo Nix has been like I said, a mixed bag of play. Sometimes, just interesting interceptions and turning the ball over, but then at other times playing that game manager role and being able to take his team to victory. Oh, and Karimi said, gave our wide receivers a chance to win plays. Okay, yeah, I feel you on that. Yeah, Daniel Jones isn't that kind of quarterback. He's not the kind of guy that's going to throw you open. He's not the kind of guy that's going to give you an opportunity to make a play like we saw from Jaden Daniels in this game. Think about the backside throw, the back shoulder throw that Jaden Daniels had on that long conversion up the middle of the field, man. He saw his guy running that like flag route towards the sideline and it was going to lean him into the coverage, and he put it perfectly on the back shoulder. You don't see that. Red X says he means Daniel Jones never gave the 50-50 ball, which is what Kenny Golladay made his money from. And look, a lot of people look at Kenny Golladay and they're like, yeah, that dude was washed, man. It was the wrong signing and all that. And I think that it was both parties to blame on that. Like, Kenny Golladay came here and just completely was a shell of himself of what we saw when he was in Detroit. And I understand he was dealing with the hip injury and all that. But like Red X is saying here, Daniel Jones never gave him that opportunity to make those kind of plays. We even had to wait until the last game that Kenny Golladay suited up in a New York Giants uniform with Davis Webb at quarterback to see him score a touchdown. That's unacceptable. Mark Madalik says all other points are mute until we get rid of Jones. This is facts, man. This is facts. Big Dog Status said, I guess 6 years of film ain't enough to know what he is, which is still some people are saying that. You still got people talking about what Jason Garrett did to him, that we need to still fix the offensive line, that there are not enough weapons on this team, that Brian Daboll is not a good play caller, and that's to blame for it. Come on, man. We saw this dude with Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka, Freddie Kitchens, Jason Garrett, Pat Shurmur, all of them about to be fired. Come on. Blackbird McKnight said, what's up, bro? How are you doing? I'm doing well, bro. He says Nabers is saying things worse than Odell already. Listen, I never had any issues with what Odell said in the Josina Anderson interview with Lil Wayne. I didn't have any issues with that. They tried to press him out for those answers. He was pretty much trying to let people know the culture in New York is all fucked up. And when she said, well, what about Eli Manning? Is it, that he's not able to run the ball that's stopping you guys? And he was like, yeah, y'all know Eli Manning not going to make no plays with his legs. But he didn't throw Eli under the bus the way that fans made it seem. But our fan base has a problem. Our fan base goes with what the narratives are. From one, the leaders in the content creator world spot, and I'll say it starts with the ones that are hired by the New York Giants, because they're not going to say nothing bad about the Giants. They think that every move that Joe Schoen and all the general managers previous to that have done are the right moves until they're completely backed into a corner where they can't say that shit no more. And then fans got to go, oh, damn, we were wrong on Daniel Jones. We were wrong on Dave Gettleman. Because they will blindly follow the leadership of this organization. But me, no, sir. No, sir. I'm not about to sit up here and just let you tell me the sky is green. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to dig into it. Even if everybody in the fan base is saying, yeah, the sky's green, I'm going to be like, hold up, why that one dude said the sky blue? And I'm going to look into it as best as I can. There's no way, especially now after the way that the Giants have been losing for the last 8 years, I'm not trusting shit that this franchise tells me. None of it. I'm going to second guess and third guess everything that they do and try to figure out where they're going wrong because they aren't doing many things right. And I can't tell nobody how to fan, but I encourage y'all to do the same. Robert Beckford said 100. Enough with the losing choir boys. Get me some dogs with talent who will lead and win. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. It's football. I don't expect these dudes to be able to get into the media and answer all the questions the right way and be the smartest and the sharpest tools in the tool bag. No, man. Get me some savages. Get me some dogs. Get me some killers on this defense. Get me some dudes that's willing to put themselves on the line over this team. Right? Give me some dudes that don't play the game selfish. We don't got those guys. We just don't. As simple as that. Jomar says that Joe Shane passed on Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy, and Bo Nix, and they compared them to Locke and DJ and felt okay with their current quarterback room. That's one of the biggest mistakes he made this year, was not only with the Daniel Jones stuff, but thinking that the quarterback room was something that he should be comfortable with. And now that Daniel Jones is playing the type of football that honestly should have him benched to protect the injury clause, they're fearful to go to the backup quarterback because of likely how it would look. Love God said, hot take, I would trade Kayvon and keep Aziz. Aziz is proving he is better. I like that hot take. I ain't gonna lie, I like that. I was a fan of maybe keeping both of them because the issue is going to be how much Aziz Ojulari gets paid. And I'm going to be monitoring that situation to see what they pay him on the market next year. But we'll see. We'll see. Moet Olson says he's taking a push. He was brought here to help DJ now and will be here for the new quarterback regime. I like it. Good reason to take the push. I'm with you on that. I'm taking the push as well. Nova Nebula's in the building, says, if they end up getting a quarterback better than Bo Nix, will that sentiment hold? I don't think so. I don't think so. Because Malik Nabers does seem like, it's crazy because people question this about Saquon Barkley being like a generational talent. And I think what you see with what he's doing in Philadelphia, there should be no debate about that. Like Saquon, dude, did you all see the run where he hurdled the guy where he was backwards? He shook one, broke one, and then hurdled one. Saquon Barkley showed you everything that he can do on one run. It was impressive. And I think that Malik Nabers is that kind of a talent. Like when you look at the separation and the talent of a guy like Jalen Hyatt and Malik Nabers, it's night and day, y'all. Yeah. The Illa says that Bo Nix telegraphs a lot of throws. I can't disagree with that. Berg says we bought the 16-year-old Ferrari for their birthday, and they don't even have their license. Whew. Facts. Strider says, I don't know if I said it before, but DJ fans need to learn how to let go because putting up with DJ is nauseating. Knock it off and move on. I always tell people, I don't like when people tell me to move on, right? So I'm not going to tell them move on. I'm going to let them just, be here until we drop that nuclear bomb and all the roaches are gone. Jomar says, facts, he paid DJ, and that's his guy. He made his decision, shouldn't be allowed another opportunity to is what I think he's saying, another opportunity to fuck up the roster even more. Derek Jones is in the building and says, anyone who says DJ lost them the game yesterday is blinded by DJ hate. It don't matter. He didn't win him the game. That's what's more important. He didn't win him the game. Daniel Jones is a hamstring to the New York Giants. There's no way around that. And I feel like fans are still trying to figure out a way to be like, it's not his fault, though. Come on, bro had 0 passing yards in the first half. The fumble is some shit you only see from quarterbacks that don't belong as a starter in this league. And Daniel Jones is the kind of quarterback that's going to get more coaches fired. That's the kind of quarterback he is. Billy O'Neill says if we don't get a quarterback next year in the draft, Nabers is gone, and I mean he will check out. They got to start winning, man. Like, if they don't start winning, Nabers is absolutely going to check out. Derek Jones says Daniel Jones is 15th in the NFL in passing yards. I want to like you, Derek. I'm just playing. But, like, they're throwing the ball more than a bunch of these teams, man. Go look at the run-to-pass ratio for the New York Giants. Like, this can't be enough. This cannot be enough. That can't be enough to be like, oh, man, I'm vouching for Daniel Jones. That cannot be it. That can't be it. I see Derek Jones as a big Daniel fan. I feel you, man. I ain't going to tell you to not root for the guy, bro. He has not played well this year. He has not. Oh, they going to get on you, Derek. Shout out to Derek one time in the building, man. Yeah, and Derek says we lost yesterday because the defense didn't play well. The defense didn't play well. But that shouldn't be a reason why you lose a game. It really shouldn't be. When you saw Jaden Daniels play up against the Cincinnati Bengals, did you think that the Commanders' defense played well? Because I didn't. They still won the game. Because they got a dog at quarterback. Logic says the root problem is John Mara. He runs the team and fans refuse to accept that. Jerry Jones is honest about running this team, his team. Mara lies and that Hard Knocks was pure propaganda and fans bought it. I don't know about the last sentence. I don't know, bro. I don't know. Shout out David Paradine in the building one time for that $5 super chat. Okay. He says, I'm taking the push. Mara doesn't have stomach to have another diva dog, and yet his late father was able to put with notably the best linebacker to ever do it. Yeah, and that dude had a bunch of character issues, right? But nobody cared. People like Lawrence Taylor was not a good person off the field. And he got into a bunch of shit. And Giants fans don't care because he was great. That's what football is actually about. I want you to be a good dude off the field. I want you to be a dude who comes in front of the beat reporters and the press and says all the right shit. But ultimately, you're not a model citizen if you're a good football player. You're a good football player. Being a model citizen is something that comes secondary to that, and we hope that you can be that. But shout out to David Pirodine, man. Definitely appreciate you supporting the channel, my dog. You've been here rocking with us for a second. The stream's been going for long, and you've been here rocking with us for a second. Blackbird McKnight says, I thought Daboll was a good coach and a quarterback whisperer. I liked Daboll, but his decisions are head scratchers. Yep. It's all good points by y'all, man. Sarah says, you're 2-7. To say Daniel Jones has played well this year is idiotic. I'm gonna let Sarah hold you down on that. I ain't saying she lying. I ain't saying she ain't. All right. Chaz G said Aziz got to stay healthy for me to support that. Yeah, the statement about, over Thibodeau, I'm with you. All right, let me scroll and catch up here a little bit. Logic's Finest says that Mara signs the checks. The Hard Knocks was pure propaganda. Mara runs the team. He's making the choices. Like I said, I don't know what's facts and what's not. You know what I'm saying? Like, it could have been propaganda. I'm not going to rule it out. Strider says, I don't mind having assholes on the team that hold themselves and everyone accountable. Absolutely. Mark Matalik. Wait, he said Matulik. Now it just like clicked to me. I think Mark was saying Matulik because he said like Tulik. I think it was Matulik. Says, what does it matter if Jones gets yards between the 20s, then turns it over in the red zone? It matters nothing. He just threw his first touchdown at home this past week, and my man is saying he's playing well. So you don't think that has anything to do with why the New York Giants are 0-5 at home this season? That Daniel Jones can't throw one single touchdown in front of MetLife's fans? Come on, man. Come on, man. I want to like you, Derek. I want to like you, bro. The Illis said if we had a player character-wise like Lawrence Taylor now, the public would banish him from playing the game. It's a different time back then. It absolutely is. And Lawrence Taylor was just that much of a dog. Like, look at Myles Garrett. That dude ripped off Mason Rudolph's helmet and beat him to a pulp with the helmet. I don't think Cleveland Browns fans are looking at him like, man, we got to get this guy off our team, man. I don't think so. Big Dog Status says she ain't lying, though. All right, Derek, we're going to give you a little chance here to defend yourself. Derek says more than a quarterback on the team, there are 21 other players, 21 other players playing for the Giants every home game, I guess he's saying. But, bro, he literally went 2 years without throwing a passing touchdown at home. I don't know how you can support that. I don't know, Derek. Derek. I want to be friends, Derek. I want us to be homies, bro. You're not allowing me right now. You're not allowing me, bro. Nah, shout out Derek, man. I appreciate Derek rocking out with us. Jaden said 15th in passing touchdowns, but Jameis Winston led the league in multiple categories and got booted. Derek says that people act as if there's only one person playing. It's not that. It's not. I don't think it's that. And I think that a lot of fans that support Daniel Jones the way that you do, you feel attacked as if that's what people are saying. But I know you will agree that quarterback is the most important position on the field, right? You would agree with that, right? Most likely you would agree that quarterback is the most important position in sports. And Derek says DJ has thrown touchdowns, but he literally just threw his first touchdown at home yesterday. Right? You know that before yesterday, the last time that he threw a touchdown in front of the home crowd was in 2022 when they were clinching the playoffs against the Indianapolis Colts, bro. Like, I don't care what's going on around you. These are all NFL caliber players. You should be able to throw touchdowns. And this has been a problem with Daniel Jones' entire career, so you can't pin it on just specifically this unit. We saw this in 2019. We saw this in 2020. When you look at Daniel Jones, even in 2019, when he put up his most touchdowns with 24, in 3 games, he had 13 of them. He had 5 touchdowns against the Washington football team at the time. Outside of that, he's been a 1-touchdown quarterback his entire career, Derek. Daniel Jones went 41 straight games, without being able to put together back-to-back performances with at least 2 passing touchdowns. He's a 1 passing touchdown a game type of quarterback. You're going to get the occasional 2 like you did the other day, 3 if you count the 1 on the ground. But come on, Derek. I want to be friends, Derek. I really do. And you guys, don't attack Derek too crazy in the chat, but I was thinking this already. James said Derek Jones is DJ Undercover. He might be. He might be, man. Shout out to Derek, though, man. I ain't mad at somebody repping for their opinion, Derek. You already know that. Yeah, I got to skip a lot of shit y'all just said right there. Nova said, can we just stop with all the elongated banter about Jones? We all know he isn't going to be on the team next season, and the vast majority of people knew it before the season started. It's spoiled milk. I hear you, bro. I hear you, man. I definitely hear you, man. Y'all are fucking crazy, man. Yo, JJ Sandana, I be trying, bro. Says we need to get off the fact of Daniel Jones because if Dabes is not making the decision to move, I don't know what he's saying there, then there is obviously an issue with the quarterbacks we have in the back. I guess you're saying if Dabes is not being proactive to put him on the bench. Yeah, I feel you on that. Unofficially said switch Daniel Jones to a tight end like they tried with Tebow and we might get something. God damn it. I mean, he's been playing tough. The way he trucked that cornerback, Mike Reese, still, man, he was looking like a tough SOB. And then got up and was like, God, and threw the ball. You saw every frustration from all 6 of his seasons come out on that touchdown. Damn. And Derek says that the Giants sucked before Daniel Jones. They did. They did. They absolutely did. Ain't no doubt about that. But that's not reason to say, like, this is what I'll ask Derek before we close out this stream. Do you think Daniel Jones is a good quarterback, Derek? That's what I want to know. Billy said, what is you looking at? Moet said, bro, did you watch the first half? DJ had negative passing yards. That is really hard to do as a starting quarterback. Backups can even get you a yard. I really just want to know, unofficially. Now, I just want to know if Derek, where he thinks Daniel Jones is. Like, do you think he's a good quarterback? Q Burrow brother says that Daniel Jones' best coach was Shermer. That's crazy. It's weird because Shermer was willing to take the leash off Daniel Jones, but like, could you imagine if Daniel Jones was turning the ball over at that rate today? Imagine if Daniel Jones fumbled the ball 19 times, lost 11 of them, and 6 of them got scooped up for touchdowns today after you paid him. $160 million. No, I don't know, man. I think Brian Daboll in 2022 might have got the best out of Daniel Jones. Deedon says negative passing yards is crazy. Unofficially says, if we was bad without him and bad with him, then why can't we move on? It's a good question. Big Dog said, you know what's crazy? Jones fans say Lamar Jackson is a running back, but truth be told, Jones is more of a running back than Jackson. That is true. I have enough respect for both of them to not call neither one of them a running back. But you see people calling Lamar Jackson a running back. I don't know what kind of pack they smoking. All right, shout out Derek, man. Shout out to Derek. Derek said he's decent. Shout out to Derek, man. Y'all don't give Derek help. Show Derek some love, man. And he said he wasn't throwing. He did only have 4 attempts. Yeah, I'm not, I ain't going to ignore that. JJ Sendana said, I hope I'm saying that right. You see, I'll be trying to put the little twang on it. Secondary is young, blown coverage. We can't stop the run, bad tackling. DJ can't read the defense or be creative. Coaches need better balance on play calling. All things that are true. And Billy O'Neill says, I don't care about their personal lives. All right, I think we're going to wrap that up here, y'all. Chris P. said Daniel Jones is Taysom Hill with $160 million. Chaz G said a decent quarterback, yes. I wouldn't disagree too heavily, but I think he's a bottom-tier starter. If we're talking about a decent starter and backup, I might give you that. But I don't think he's a decent starter. It's difficult for coaches to win games with a quarterback like Daniel Jones. Kevin the PRF said, why did Brian Daboll give Shane the same energy he gave Martindale when he said he was going with Jones? He should have. He really should have. Logic says any person who defends Daniel Jones after 6 years of film is not to be taken seriously. Fuck. Sarah said the only reward you get for paying a mediocre quarterback $40 million is a nice, comfy seat in football purgatory. Q Burrow brother said, don't Daboll look like a deer caught in the mesmerizing headlights? He does. And Joe Shane, too. And last one we'll take here. This one is from David Perodin. David says,
okay.
Oh, Perodin. Yeah, okay, I got it right a few times. Perodin. I love when y'all do that. David Perodin. It looks like it's pronounced. We let Barkley leave and he didn't have character issues, so the argument of times were different back then isn't a good one. Appreciate the therapy session, everyone. Yeah, man. Salute to David, because the therapy session is like, it's not just me. I ain't just a therapist. It's like we all giving our 2 cents. It's like an AA meeting, everybody talking about their problems. And that's how we get to the therapy. Shout out to David for supporting the channel, man. I definitely appreciate that, man. That $10 super chat definitely goes a long way. And, yeah, man, y'all know we can't do this without y'all. Y'all know that. If we do this without y'all, it'd be an empty stream, and that wouldn't be too fun. So big salute to y'all. As far as this last one here, I can't say it was a wasted pick, but yeah, we went off on a tangent on some Daniel Jones stuff. 3.5 hours of the Giant overreaction. That's how these be, man. That's how these be. But again, big salute to all of y'all, man, for pulling up, rocking out with me, talking some Giants football on another Monday afternoon where the Giants lose another game. And it's looking really very narrow for the New York Giants right now, where we're going, where we're headed as a franchise. And we'll see. By the time we get to the draft and we get to doing that kind of content, I just hope the New York Giants can look in the mirror and understand, at least at bare minimum, that it's time to draft a quarterback. And this is the saying right here. I said it in a rhyme one time. It is what it is, but it ain't what it once was. And yeah, the New York Giants and my love for them has been wavered this season. It's been scary hours for us. And the position that Joe Shane has put us in, I don't know how he's going to dig us up out of that. But again, I commend all of y'all for rocking out with me this long on a Giant Overreaction. Let me see some biceps in the chat before we get up out of here, especially from the people that rocked out from the beginning of this stream. I saw y'all in the building. Big shout out to the gang. Y'all know what it is. No matter what happens on that field on Sundays, I can hold myself accountable to pull up here and rock out with y'all and talk Giants football, and always feel better about it when all said and done. Big shout out Kareem, big shout out to Don, big shout out to Hyphen Wade, big shout out to Big Dog Status, Red X3R0, big shout out to Jaden714, big shout out to Q Burrow, big shout out to Deaton, big shout out to Royal Money Entertainment, man. Y'all know what it is, man. A lot of love. I see you blazing brazen. I see y'all. Pal in the building representing my dogs over there from the Bleacher Report. Sarah representing those Minnesota Vikings. Big shout out to all of y'all. Big shout out to the homie Dilla. My dog Sebastian is in the building. Unofficially Retired Podcast is in the building. Shout out to all of y'all, man. This ain't easy. This ain't easy. Big shout out to JJ Sendana. Try to give him a little more on that jump. I appreciate y'all, man. Y'all know what it is, man. Y'all know how we end every stream over here on the Giant Overreaction. Keep raising that bar. Keep living those dreams because the universe flows in Technicolor and surround sound. Rest in peace to the podcast GOAT, Combat Jack. Shout out to Moet. Shout out to Chris Peace. Shout out to Kareem Yee. Shout out to Capital G. I see y'all, man. And y'all know what it is. I will see y'all tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here, recapping the whole entire NFC East with my brother. Definitely appreciate y'all spending y'all time with me on this Monday afternoon. Big shout out to David Perrodin. Ill Will, I see you, man. I see you. I'll see y'all on the next stream. Y'all know what it is, man. Enjoy the rest of y'all Monday afternoon. Y'all be good. Peace to the Giants Nation, y'all.
Spike don't care.